All right. Good evening, everybody. I know it is very late for me to be starting, especially on a Monday, but it's weird all around actually. So we're doing a different game than what I had planned. Apologies to those of you who were looking for Book of Hours tonight, but an opportunity came up, and I'm starting later than I wanted, but that's just a pure work feature. It's I think it's going to be like that for a little bit this week. So just a couple of expectations in terms of how the week's going to go, just so I can get those out of the way right off the top. I will be coming back to Book of Hours when I can. Let's say I know that sounds a little non-committal, but the game is coming out on the 26th. The expansion is coming out on the 26th, and I will be covering it then. And I think we'll probably be able to get at least one more good stream in. But this opportunity came up, and it is a little bit shorter in terms of the window in which I'm going to do some things with it. And I think it's a game that actually quite a few of you will be interested in. So I really wanted to make sure that I did this. And the Burden of Command team was actually nice enough to give me an early look at the demo that will be coming out. I don't think I have a specific date for that, but I think there may be we may have a visitor from the team who'll be who might be coming in. Anyways, I will maybe before we wrap up, I'll get you all excited for the game, and then we can figure out the dates of all of these things. But I believe this will actually. The one thing I can do is give you a link right now. Hello, Birdman. I think I'm the one who's late, but very good to see you again. And thank you for shouting out the stream in the Discord. I'm doing my usual extended, kind of doing my extended intros. But it's actually been a while since I played this, so I wanted to take a minute to maybe bring everyone up to speed for myself. Bring everybody up to speed first of all. Bring myself up to speed for myself, and then we can jump. Oh, demo's out at the end of the month. Thank you for that. So for those of you who haven't figured it out already, Birdman 850th of their name is actually involved with the development of this game. I am indirectly involved, but we'll not well, maybe the present tense isn't correct on that, but I will cover that because I wasn't 100. I did sign an NDA for this, so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't speaking out of turn. But when I got my key, they said it's like, no, you actually probably should be you probably should be disclosing that you were involved. So. But yeah, so let's take a quick minute here. Before I jump into the game, I actually think it wouldn't be a bad idea to talk about the store page, because it'll tell you what the game is about. And hello, Mad Dad and Cured, or Mad Ad, sorry. Oh, and thank you very much for staying up, Cured. I apologize for the late start. That was work, but I do want to jump into it because again, we do have a nice opportunity to look at to stream a demo earlier than others would. Now, this game isn't completely without attention. In fact, there's been a couple of bigger streamers. I think was it Historical Gamer and Nucrium. Anyways, definitely a couple of very big streamers have already covered this here. So really, this is just a chance to sort of show all of you something that I think some of you will be interested in. But let's just take a minute to introduce it because this game's actually got quite a bit of buzz about it. And it's one that I found out about ages ago when they talked about a couple of the consultants that they had working on it, people who'd worked on things that I previously enjoyed. So Burden of Command, Can You Lead? Burden of Command is an emotionally authentic tactical leadership RPG. You're a company captain in the historical cotton balers. Fighting psychology as much as bullets, you must build respect, trust, and battlefield experience to bring your brothers safely home. So far as I can tell, this is a first game by Green Tree Games. We can go through the credits. We'll talk a little bit about the people involved with it. And there are reviews. Now, these are, of course, reviews before the full version is out. The game is it has got a slated release for Q1 2025. But, of course, you can wishlist it now. And I think a number of you would probably be interested in doing so. But, again, we'll push you ahead. There's actually quite a bit of news if you go into the recent news and announcements. But the early impressions of the game, aiming to be an interactive band of brothers. It could prove to be one of the most memorable and affecting games about war ever. And the question that Burden of Command wants to answer is, what kind of leader are you really? And in many cases, the result is someone very different from the one that we had imagined ourselves being. So, about the game, Burden of Command, the sweet spot for games with narrative is the place where writing meets design. Burden of Command, oop, well, there we go. Burden of Command is a class by itself. I know of no other game that brings history to life. Okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to read all of these all of these here. So let's do the description. Burden of Command is an emotionally authentic World War II tactical leadership RPG. You are the captain of a company of the fabled cotton balers, leading your men on and off historical battles from Morocco to Hitler's Eagle's Nest. Fighting psychology as much as bullets, you must build respect, trust, and battlefield experience to bring your brothers safely home. This game contains graphic violence from actual World War II image and mature themes. It might be imagery or images. Gamer discretion is advised. Master the psychology of the battlefield. Demoralize the enemy, inspire your men, build trust and respect to overcome their natural fear of death, all based on painstaking study of real combat psychology. Realistic World War II tactical leadership. Learn to suppress the enemy, flank them, and finish them. Good tactics earn you trust, respect, and an enemy surrender. Bad tactics earn death for your men. Life and death decisions. Get a soldier killed, lose them forever. Permadeath. Your choices, their consequences. A leadership RPG. Guide your men through personal crises and combat stress. How you treat them affects their mindsets. Mindsets change how they speak and think, and how they perform on the battlefield. Lead well and forge a brotherhood willing to follow you to hell and back. The Burden of Command. Lead your unit through a narrative-driven campaign of 18 turn-based tactical battles. When will you risk their lives for the mission or withdraw to preserve them? Face the same decisions they did. Painstakingly recreated historical battlefields and forces from period accounts, satellite imagery, period maps, and aerial reconnaissance. Military historian Professor John McManus, official chronicler of the Cotton Balers Regiment, we follow. Playtests and advise us. So, and I will actually say, for those of you, I know there's a few. Hello, Vanguard Master. I think you are going to be very interested in this. So I know you are former Navy rather than the will be depicted in Burden of Command, but I think this might be one that you're intrigued by. And I was actually going to say, because I know there are a number of aspiring developers or outright developers in the channel here, I should mention that when you load this game up, you actually see just a bunch of Python stuff load in the background. So it's always very encouraging to see good games which are made with tools that, in principle, you sort of have available directly for yourself. Now, of course, it takes considerable talent and effort to be able to make something like Burden of Command, but it is always encouraging when you do see games taking on the, or basically using things that, you don't necessarily have sort of a financial or other barrier to you being able to use. So I'm going to just take a quick sip of tea. Oh, fair enough. Okay, so sorry, I shouldn't be talking out of school. They'll be hidden for the demo, so sorry about that. Okay, so I don't want to go too much longer. I know we've been, this is a nice chance to get everybody to come in, but we do actually need to play the game. The one thing I will do, though, is do a quick run of the credits here. And this is just mostly because, one, I know Birdman's in them. And number two, it actually gives you a little bit of an idea in terms of some of the effort that has gone into this game. And we'll talk a little bit about what this game is about, or what it seems to be about, whether sort of my background with the game here, and then we will properly tuck into it. So we've got a number of media credits here. So there is definitely a degree of authenticity to the game. There are sort of images and there are creations in this which are invented specifically for the game. But one of the things that I think they're really trying to do is ground these decisions in sort of the reality of the moment. So it's an effort to, and this actually really does come back to some of the things that I've enjoyed about gaming almost as long as I've ever done gaming. But they do try to ground them sort of in the history, and this kind of harkens back to me where I played Civilization. Maybe the original reason why I played Civilization was it just looked like a fun game to play. But you play that enough times and you can't help but wonder what a hoplite is, or, whatever winds up sort of catching your fancy. And I kind of like to think that something like Burden of Command, World War II is definitely something that has been studied, it's represented a lot inside of games. And yet I think it's fair to say that there's actually quite a bit that can still be learned about it. And so in this case here, the game definitely does take its history seriously, as is evidenced by the media credits, along with a few others that you'll see here. So, senior advisors, the brass, Colonel John Antle, and I must have to apologize here. I'm very likely going to be butchering a few names. John Antle is a soldier, military historian, author, and leadership expert. He has published 15 books and hundreds of magazine articles on military technology, military history, and leadership. He served for 30 years in the U.S. Army as a tank and cavalry officer, and then worked for Microsoft and Gearbox Software on the Brothers in Arms video game franchise, and is now a member of the Army Science Board. John is deeply involved in corporate and government leadership development. To learn more about John Antle, go to american-leadership.com. William Bernhardt. Bernhardt has written over 40 books that have sold over 10 million copies worldwide. He has twice won the Oklahoma Book Award for Best Fiction in 1995 and 1999, and in 1998 he received the Southern Writers Guild's Gold Medal Award. In 2000, he was honored with the H. Louise Distinguished Author Award. Bill is a bona fide guru with his Red Sneakers books on writing. It is Bill's fault that you may actually feel the burden of command when you send your empathy-amplified brothers up that hill. Dr. John C. McManus. When Dr. McManus isn't writing superb military history books, see here, he's being lively on CNN.com, Fox News, C-SPAN, the Military Channel, the Discovery Channel, the Smithsonian Network, the History Channel, and PBS, to name more than a few. John has kept our history, making honest and given all of us a personal sense of you are there while building the burden of command experience. Gordon L. Rotman, former Special Forces, Airborne Infantry, Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol, Military Intelligence, author of 140 books, fiction, nonfiction, and young adult, an expert in World War II military equipment, life, and slang, books FUBAR and Snafu. Gordon helps keep your soldiers appropriately foul-mouthed, tactically accurate, and on the straight and narrow. Form Language Studio, Darren Lewis and Daniel Romanovsky gave us early critical guidance on how to achieve a painterly look reminiscent of classical military art, which is actually an exhibit at the Canadian War Museum right now, I believe. Without them, we would not have been able to create as many beautiful landscapes to blow up, nor how to make landscapes visually interesting even when destroyed. And Ian Thomas, game developer and writer for the story company Tailspinners, Ian makes us all jealous with his compelling career in interactive television, education, puppet making, film, live events, and the game industry. Ian joins us a bit later, but quickly whipped our sloppy formations into shape for tighter and more dramatic narratives and prose. The artist, Sergei Averkin. Sergei is a Russian artist with a degree in computer graphics. He is a fan of traditional Russian paintings. For example, his trees and Burden of Command are inspired by Shishkin. He's particularly excited to revisit the traditions of military illustration with a painted Burden of Command. You can see more of his work on ArtStation. And previously, Ahmed Rawi, classically trained, Ahmed is an experienced professional in the CG entertainment industry. He has created characters and special effects for games and movies, worked as a concept artist, 3D artist, illustrator, and matte painter. His work has been published by 3D Total in the book Beyond Art Fundamentals, and he received the CG Society's Choice Award. His skills allow Burden of Command to realize a style reminiscent of classic military art. Coders, project lead Luke Hughes. Now, if you want to feel completely unaccomplished in your life, get ready. With a PhD in AI, Yale, Masters in Neurophysiology and Psychology, Oxford, multiple patents, and a minor in history, Luke is keen to create a novel yet realistic psychological battlefield. His passion for Burden of Command is in his blood. His father served in the Pacific in World War II and is also as an eminent historian, Dr. Thomas Park Hughes. Luke hopes not to disappoint his late dad, other veterans, or you. Now, I should actually mention as well, my own connection with this material and biography in particular is that my grandfather also served in the Pacific in the Australian Air Force. But this isn't about me, and that definitely doesn't relate to the cotton balers. But I do know that he received the Distinguished Flying Cross. So while I never got a direct answer to the question, what did you do in the war, Granddad? I definitely know the answer to that is some crazy nonsense. So, John Strong, with engineering degrees from Princeton and MIT, both focused on computer modeling of real-world systems, John specializes in getting things done accurately and efficiently. It is with this mindset that he's developed many of the algorithms underlying the Burden of Command game engine. Having lived and worked in Belgium for 2 years, spending time walking various battlefields from the beaches at Dunkirk down through the Ardennes forest, John is excited to be part of the effort. To be part of this effort to bringing that period of history to life. Historical content. content expert and lead, Stephen Lohr. Stephen Lohr is a retired naval officer and longtime amateur military historian and wargamer. In addition to wargaming as a hobbyist, Stephen has umpired wargames at the Naval War College, leading to his interest in using wargames as a teaching and training aid. I know somebody in chat might be interested in that. He has previously worked as a researcher for Buzz Aldrin's Space Program Manager and on the playtest team for Command Modern Naval Air Operations. Historical media expert Kirill Krasnov, a longtime gamer, occasional modder, former freelance photo editor, and also a technology and military enthusiast. He started dabbling in computer graphics in about 2005 and never stopped. Did colorized photos before the rise of neural networks. Past historical media expert Eric Benjamin. Eric Benjamin is a United States Marine vet. My grandfather served as a combat surgeon during D-Day, and my father in Korea as part of a tank crew. I've been in the medical field since 1981, first as a paramedic, then working 30 years in forensics. Self-taught in Photoshop and photo enhancement, avid gamer with both World War II and Cold War titles. Eric has playtested for several game titles, including Radio Commander and Counter-Terrorist Agency. I feel very honored to be part of this group of such wonderful individuals to help bring an amazing game to life. Chris Doran, I think. Chris Doran is a naval officer whose interest in military history started with the 50th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. As a small unit leader, he learned the importance of balance between subordinate and superior. For the past several years, he has been building model ships and aircraft to tell the human stories found in military history. And Chris Ketchison is a longtime game player and an old grognard. He serves as military historian and researcher for Burden of Command, poring through our digitized archival documents on the cotton balers from the National Archives. He is also a retired Marine, having attained the rank of Major. Marketing by David Pesek, I think. Longtime gamer, video game journalist, and communication freak, David specializes in online marketing and content creation with a PhD in semiotics, an MBA in marketing, and a BA in media languages. His focus is on brewing the right messages for Burden of Command, the Burden of Command audience and in the online world. Also, having worked on Heroes of Normandy, being a history buff and an avid RPG player, this burden looked like just the right one. Two scenario designers. Lead scenario designer Steve Overton, known in the wargaming community as the Mad Russian. Steve has been creating historically based scenarios for games since 1971. He's on the development teams for Panzer Command Ostfront and the award-winning Flashpoint campaign's Red Storm Players Edition. Steve joined the Burden of Command team to expand the boundaries of where historically based games can be taken. Steve was also a U.S. Army sergeant and combat engineer. Oh, that's very cool. I'm the Reconstituted Micropro. I can't remember what their next release is, but I did not know that. That's very cool. Scenario designer Henk Stoffers. Henk Stoffers is a scenario designer for Combat Mission and TAC Ops, a member of the Mad Russians HSG group known as Stoffel. Making historical scenarios is his passion. Using his army experience and his love for history of warfare, Stoffel worked for the Dutch army with an armored infantry battalion and served in the Army Reserve. He also assisted the Dutch Military Combat and Maneuver School on several projects involving military PC games and training. Testing lead Randy Kinney. Fine figure of a man. Randy has been a lifelong gamer, enjoying that games bring people together. He has moderated for gaming communities, multiplayer games, and the Burden of Command community. Having participated in various playtests, he has spent a decade building skills that help indie developers. Wanting to pass his knowledge to the gaming community as a whole, he is consistently looking for developers in need of playtesting and moderation support. Adam Dials. Adam's long romance with war games and military history eventually landed him in the Army and a couple of all expense paid trips to Iraq. After transitioning to the reserves, he began working in software testing on Army simulations, later moving into the commercial game industry. He's currently a battalion executive officer in a light infantry battalion in the Texas Army National Guard and just returned from a deployment to the Horn of Africa. Rob Mathis. Rob graduated from the University of Tennessee with a commission in the U.S. Army and a math degree. He rose to captain of armored cavalry and served a year-long combat tour in Iraq. Rob went on to earn an MBA and become a writer with 5 novels to his credit. He is also an elected official, a professional mediator, and an accomplished public speaker. Hello, Tiberiosity. And Emil Safroniev, I think. Emil is a modder and former QA professional at BioWare. He loves strategy and tactics games and has pretty much every story-driven RPG out there. Yes, we're exaggerating, but not by much. His main focus when playing, modding, or testing has always been the mood, atmosphere, story, and RPG elements. These will be especially important when we try to convey what Burden of Command must have felt like for the historical cotton balers. I think if I, by the way, I didn't mean to spend this long on it, but it feels wrong to just do half of the entries. Now, I suspect, given the fact that there was an email sent out on these, yes, we've got playtesting leads: Matthew Barges, Josh Beyer, Craig Elliott, Mike Fredrickson, Javier Martin, Paul No, and Kai Christoph Stat. Special thanks to Heather Albano, game designer, alternate history novelist, and branching railroad evangelist. Heather played a key early role in the narrative design of Burden of Command, drawing on her experience creating branching railroads for Choice of Games interaction fiction. She helped the Advanced Scouts lay the track to support multiple awesome protagonist journeys. Perhaps coincidentally, the upcoming third book in her time travel trilogy now features journeys to World War II Europe. And Chaim Kraus. Chaim died in 2021. We deeply miss his unceasingly generous spirit. Chaim transformed our IT infrastructure. It is hard to imagine Burden today without his vital contribution. Chaim came to America as well, first as enlisted, then as civilian in the Army University's Command and General Staff College as a military simulation subject matter expert. Sound. Chris Scribner. Chris is a sound designer and music composer with a degree in audio engineering. He gained experience working at a professional recording studio before taking on a number of freelance projects in the video game industry, eventually being recruited to teach a course on interactive game audio at Da Vinci College. With a passion for synthesis and a knack for realism, Chris strives for a perfect blend of sound to deliver the emotional burden of command to the player. Voice director Maurice Suckling. With over 20 years of experience in games, Maurice has directed voices for the likes of Borderlands the pre-sequel, Driver, and Sonic and Sega's All-Star Racing. He also has writing credits on games such as Civilization VI, as a designer of historical simulation games, an historian, and a lifelong wargamer. Finally, a lead writer, Alan Gies. Alan is a multifaceted writer and experienced gamer. He wrote Tin Star, a popular piece of interactive fiction set in the Old West. He was a screenwriter for Karma's Shadow, an indie film set in the 80s. Building on his degree in economics, MSU, go Spartans, he pursues his stories wherever they take him. Please go ahead. And Paul Wang. Paul Wang is a rising talent in the world of interactive fiction. His first work, 2013, Sabers of Infinity, received excellent reviews for its rich world building and evocative characters. Armed with a BA in history from SFU, all right, I could appreciate a Vancouver University. However, I do need to point out that it is UBC Economics, which is where the action is. Paul is fascinated by the social, political, and psychological elements of battle. With Burden of Command, he hopes to create an authentic, uncompromising view of service, leadership, and combat. So this is the thing, right? Like, this took a while. We're about, 15, 20 minutes into the stream. We've been talking about this game, but I think there is some value in terms of taking the time to go through these credits. Number one, because these are people who put a lot of effort into the game, but you can actually see some really common themes in terms of not just the talent that's behind the game, but why they were interested in this game. Because I think most people can relate to the idea of having an idea for a game, or, having something that you want to create. There's obviously a lot of creative talent here who are deciding, what their next book's going to be, or what their next project's going to be like. These are people likely with options. But there does seem to be something about this idea of doing not just another war game, but specifically doing a war game which is dealing with those psychological aspects. And there is something to be said. In terms of gaming, you can sort of see this idea of something like Darkest Dungeon, right? Which is dealing with sort of the toll that it takes on you to sort of confront monsters over and over again. And you can also see how that informs the design of that particular game, right? Where, your physical wounds, those are healed instantly at the end of every round, but the psychological scars stay, and they build up, and they will have some pretty profound effects as they go on. And there are other games that have sort of picked up on that, but it still hasn't necessarily been present inside of games. The closest that you kind of get would be sort of a morale system. But the hints to this being a really good idea for a game have always been present if you sort of know where to look. So for instance, if you go on something like Ask Historians, a really common question that you will notice is something along the lines of like, why weren't there more people killed in historical battles, or things along those lines. And they do sort of talk about some of these different sort of theories of war making, and some of the factors that go into the fact that you can't really expect a whole group of people to fight to the last man, right? That there's going to be a certain point where the line breaks and people run. And of course, people who run are less likely to be killed, although it's usually better to be on the winning side. So again, in terms of wargaming, you will see these morale systems. They might decide whether or not your group performs better, or they may not move forward or something along those lines. But in this case here, this game takes an interesting direction, which is that, yes, there's all of that present. In fact, I would say that based on my own experience of this, it definitely seems to follow sort of the proper old school war game of sort of like a hex map, and having scenarios, historical scenarios. And the thing to remember about that style of wargaming is, in some cases, victory can be just outperforming what your side historically did, right? So it's not that you do an alternate history where the Axis wins World War II, but if you're on the Axis side, can you do better in a losing battle than they historically did? And I'm not going to try and suggest that that's present in the game. In fact, I'm specifically trying to avoid sort of nudging you towards a particular conception of how the scenarios go, because especially if you don't know the history of some of these things, and it is going to go into some history that I think will be new to people, there will be some things that can potentially shock you, and you need to deal with, in the moment that that you as the leader, the decision lies on you, right? That's the burden of command. Sorry, it's a long day. I'm still trying to get my thoughts together. So, again, if you take those threads, right? World War II, certainly a setting for games that has been done quite a bit, but still provides new material. And then sort of the long tradition of wargaming, certainly a very long and established style of gaming, long before any computer gaming was really conceived of. But finally, that unique angle on this, which is to say that, you're taking the perspective of a specific person, and there is this tension between being able to accomplish a mission and being able to take care of the people under you, right? The people who are effectively entrusting their lives to you. And the fact that, to a certain extent, that these are people ultimately through which you will achieve your goals, but you will do that by putting them at risk. It definitely makes for an interesting intersection of things which you haven't necessarily seen inside of a game yet. And so I'm eager to see this. I'm also eager to see this because, as I mentioned, I was an early tester for this. And so every once in a while I'll say, I don't really like, to me, the thing about secrets is, as soon as you tell people that you have a secret, you're on your path to betraying that secret. So usually I just shut up about this stuff. But every once in a while I'll say, it's like, okay, I can't talk about this now, but down the road, if you remember, bring this up and we'll talk about it again. Well, this is one of these moments, right? This is something that I was involved in a little bit before. And there's some things that I liked, some things that I actually kind of bounced off of a little bit, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, because much like Cultist Simulator in that, games are interesting when they are their own thing and they make a clear decision in terms of why they are doing things the way that they are. But I have not played this basically since that first early run. And so this is an opportunity for me to see the state of this game, which I've been following for a while, but also following as someone who has actually played it in an early stage. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to see something new, to hopefully maybe bring a game to the attention of a few of you. And it's a chance for me to kind of see all of the hard work that the team has been up to for quite some time. I was at my old job when I was on the test for this. So here we go. Cotton Baler's demo. Tanks rarely reveal hidden units that aren't shooting at them. Uh-oh. I'm gonna guess it's probably not supposed to be a black screen as long as this. Okay, well that's fine. We'll. Oh, here we go. Warning, while this demo is not the final release, will occasionally show disturbing images of graphic violence intended to convey the true burden of war. Click anywhere, press a key to continue.
Hello, this is Luke Hughes, lead designer for Burden of Command. And I'm breaking through the fourth wall today to thank you. Thank you for taking a risk on something new, a leadership RPG. I imagine you're here hoping to test your mettle as a leader emotionally, morally, tactically in World War II. For us to give you that experience, it means a risk for you. What's the risk? Well, a new thing requires, obviously, a learning curve. Learning curves can produce confusion and even frustration. And playtesting has shown that there is a learning curve for Burden. Two kinds. The easier part, new things that people haven't done before. Harder, things that people have done before, done differently. So I'm going to be breaking in occasionally to help you with video demonstrations and also discussion of the design purposes, why we did things you're not used to or violate some of your assumptions, to give you a credible leadership role-playing experience.
That first mile, 24th September 1942, Camp Pickett, Virginia. Oswin, lovely to see you. How are you doing? We are playing the Burden of Command demo. I'm not sure if this is something, this might be something that you are interested in. This is a, as I just explained, sort of a tactical leadership RPG. So you take the role of a leader, but you do still have the war game elements. And I think this is pretty interesting. 24th September 1942, excuse me, Camp Pickett, Virginia. Morning dew dribbles down the bright leaves of the forest. Ahead, Platoon Sergeant Bennett leads the way beneath the canopy. That should be the hill, he notes, and gestures towards the rise on the east. Bit of a walk, but we're close. On his back is slung the standard issue American M1 rifle, a near twin to your own. In September 1939, the U.S. Army had ranked 17th in the world in size and combat power, just behind Romania. Rick Atkinson, An Army at Dawn, The War in North Africa, 1942-1943, Volume 1 of the Liberation Trilogy, Kindle location 340. Yeah, no worries. I did hit like an escape and click the mouse button as well. So I'll try again. I figure I want to mostly I think the best thing that I can do is plant a flag whenever things behave a bit differently than intended. But mostly I just want to try and move on with the game. So obviously this game is not released until first quarter 2025. There's still some work to do, obviously. But okay, Blackwater Canyon in autumn, image courtesy of Forest Wander. All right, our 3 dialogue options. You said that 10 miles ago, Sergeant, or I should take another compass bearing, or it sounds like he knows where he's going. Let's take another compass bearing. We're on course, Lieutenant, Sergeant Bennett replies as your fingers rest atop the compass case. The map references were pretty clear. It wouldn't be unusual for the trainers to throw you a curve providing a dubious map. After all, leadership is about overcoming adversity, but they can't hide landmarks or move buildings. And after all, Sergeant Bennett has been in the Army since before the big draft in 40. He knows his way around. The task had started with 16 million men who registered for the draft in the fall of 1940 and who would expand regular Army and National Guard divisions. Atkinson, AAD, Kindle location 340. And I am a recently commissioned lieutenant. So this one actually, this is one thing that I know I've read before, but there are two ideas in terms of these choices. One which says, you know, for pure authenticity, you don't tell people the consequences of their choices, and and this tends to frustrate people. Or you tell people the consequences of decisions, and they don't get as angry. I am definitely in the second category. So I'll go for the options, but in the role-playing sense, I probably wanted to say recently commissioned lieutenant. So background set to regular army, prestige +1. Prestige is how much influence you have with your superiors after the scenario is over. Background is set to 90-day wonder, trust +10. Trust is how your men will react to your orders within a scenario. 10 trust is worth approximately 1 prestige or loyalty. Or I am a reservist returning to the army, loyalty +1, background is set to reservist. Loyalty is how much influence you have over the men after a scenario is over. The ink is hardly dry on your commission, and at least by regular army standards, but 90 days of intense training made you feel like you could take on the world, which is good since the Germans and Japanese seem to be busy trying to conquer everything. The US has yet to send many divisions overseas, but it really is only a matter of time. Although Arcadia Conference had confirmed Germany as the principal foe, as both wished, there was no plan to ensure that forces would be deployed against Germany, other than the movement of 3 divisions to Northern Ireland and a vague agreement to land in North Africa. Vincent O'Hara, Torch, pages 35 to 36. A 1940 U.S. Army propaganda poster notable for its old-style helmets. And if you didn't notice this note here, it says indicates an image has an explanatory or historical caption, like that shown in your bottom left. However, for your convenience, you may mouse anywhere over the image to invoke, not just over this icon. Time to move.
So here I am in boot camp somewhere in Virginia, 1942, just like you will be soon. I'm going to start with our first concept that will be familiar and unfamiliar, your first learning curve aspect. So, like games like XCOM and frankly many tactical games these days, we use action points. We call them order, and they're orders, and they have the green dots. So this leader has 4 action points. And no surprise, when he say moves, he spends an action point, as you can see happening there.
The U.S. Army will go to war in earnest soon. As an officer, your duty will be to lead the men of your platoon. You just have to find them first. Mouse over the book icons for history or image notes. All right, left click to select the leader, right click to move them. The WASD keys will move the camera. Use the scroll wheel to zoom in or out. Not terribly useful right now, but it will be eventually. All right, so left click the leader, right click to move them here. Oh, I clicked by mistake, so I don't know what that was supposed to say, but left click the leader, right click to move them. A leader moving alone is quite fast and vulnerable. Okay, white highlighted hexes indicate where you can move. Lighter colored hexes indicate what you can see. It's a good view, good enough to see a few stragglers from your first platoon. Looks like the kitchen patrol is still on their way to the obstacle course, Sergeant Bennett notes. And if we let them dog things, they'll never get there before dinner. So we're going to order them to move up, no change in verbosity. Verbosity is one of the 3 character traits. It reflects how much a leader likes to talk. Verbosity does not impact the tactical battlefield, but may add some chrome to conversations. Yell at those men, verbosity +1. Or wave them forward, -1. Verbosity is one of the 3 characters. Well, we've already read that, so. Yeah, no worries, Birdman. I know it took a long time to get started on this, so good luck with all that you're going through, and I'm sure we'll catch up before too long. Also, if any of you do have questions or anything along those lines, feel free to bring them up, and I can try to pass them along. Although, of course, there's nothing stopping you from wishlisting the game, participating in the forums, or interacting with the Twitter account. Order them to move up.
This is a leadership RPG. We're always going to be focused on bringing out leadership aspects. In the Army, leaders are in charge of platoons, which is a group of squads or companies. And so there's a command structure, and we do that too. This is a squad here, part of my rifle platoon. For it to do something, I've got to order it, or if you want to make it simpler, activate it. So, did you see an order came up on me, not just a squad. The squad paid its action point, but I'm just going to say order from now on. But I paid an order because effectively I ordered the squad.
You gain their attention, then call out an order. Conditioned by training, they obey. A squad must be activated to utilize their own orders. A leader will spend an order to activate a squad when that squad initially shoots, moves, etc. Once the squad has been activated, they have enough direction that they can expend 2 or even 3 orders without requiring further leader order for the rest of the turn. So if it's not clear from that statement here, the idea is that you will pay the order to move that unit, but you don't pay it every single time. So if you had, say, I think my character had 4. So the idea here is that in theory, I could keep my leader in position and I could move 4 different units, but I wouldn't be limited to 4, the 4 1-pip movements. I'd be able to take sort of 4 full turns. At least that's my understanding. We can put that to the test. All right, left-click the squad, right-click to move them. Units can move independently of leaders, though this is not always preferable. It is often necessary since a leader can't be everywhere. Left-click the squad, select moving them will cost the leader 1 order to activate them for that turn. The squad itself will consume 1 order to actually move. So here you can see we've got the 2 little dots here, or also up at the top here. We've got the engineers with 3, so we'll move the 1. So 1 to activate the squad, 1 to move. Call for double time, Lieutenant. Or sorry, call for double time, Lieutenant, Sergeant Bennett asks. When a squad first activates in a round, the leader must expend an order. After that, the squad can use its orders without additional cost.
This squad has been activated. The leader no longer needs to pay an order to activate it. So let's move it, and you'll see no action from the leader. He didn't spend another order.
Order the squad to move again. This time it won't cost the leader any order because the squad was already activated this turn.
So I'm going to come down there, join my squad, lead, grab them both, and go somewhere. Now this time, they'll both pay an order. But be careful, it's not an activation order. They're both moving. You don't get a free ride. You got to pay for the move too. So there you go. We're similar to games you're used to, action points. But in this case, they're really orders, and they involve things like squad activation.
Here they are. Sergeant Bennett notes as Sergeant Layton, no relation, and his kitchen patrol reach the summit. Layton, can you see the obstacle course from here? Breathless, Sergeant Layton nods in the affirmative. His follow-up spud peelers are all but ready to drop. So clearly they can't go very far with us. If only they were in better shape, or they are not part of the coming exercise. If only they were in better shape. From this height, you can also see a little stream whose serpentine channel marks the bounds of your own training area. The stream isn't far, which is a good thing. The stream, like other terrain, costs more movement points to cross than flat open land. You won't always be able to get somewhere in a single order, especially with a squad in tow. One last push should put your boots beside the stream, spent perhaps, but in position nonetheless. But first, you will have to detach from Layton's squad. The first left click of a hex selects both units in it. The second left click of either a leader portrait or the squad below will select only that unit. Do not follow Luke's example in the video and instead rebel and left click the leader portraits repeatedly until only the leader is highlighted. When you move them out, they will separate from the squad. Okay, so left click the leader portrait repeatedly until only the leader is highlighted. And then right click to move only the leader. And I think, yeah, just Lieutenant Unnamed.
Honestly, it would have been simplest to design the game as 1 unit per hex, like many games do. But frankly, it just felt wrong not to have leaders in with their men leading them. So we committed to simple stacking. 1 leader, 1 squad per hex. So then how do you manage selection? It's simple. Click any unit in the hex, both select, because you probably want to move both of them normally. But maybe you just want to move the leader this time. Click again. And here I am. So I'll do the same thing again. I'll click the squad, and I go back and forth between just the squad and both.
Down by the stream. Let's take a breather, Sergeant Bennett suggests, but we're almost there. At this point, your leader should be out of orders. 3 to move your leader, 1 to activate the KP squad. The KP squad itself moved twice, the normal amount for a green rifle squad. Orders refresh at the start of a new game turn. Out of orders means we can't do anything. What if I didn't move the squad? Veteran squads have more orders. I'm going to say out of orders doesn't mean we can do... out of orders means we can't do anything, just because I think these are fairly self-explanatory. But obviously, feel free to ask questions if anything comes to mind. Very true. Once those are gone, a unit can't do much but be a target. Everything important in Burden of Command costs an order. Want to move a leader? An order. Want to move a squad? The leader pays an order to activate the squad, then the squad expends its own orders to take actions. Shooting or assaulting? We'll get to those, but yep, an order. Since there are currently no enemy units around, just pass the round until a new game turn begins. The forest thins. At last, you spy a hint of civilization, a little wooden bridge that crosses a gully and a low wooden wall beyond it. The clearing should be just up ahead, Lieutenant, Bennett calls back to you. A movement order can span a single hex or 4, but the order cost remains the same. Train like you fight so that you can fight like you train. With your leader, it doesn't matter if a unit crosses 1 hex or 4, it still costs an order. Sometimes you will want to get the most out of a single order, and sometimes you will want to be cautious, and other times the terrain will simply restrict movement. The assembly point is a simple one marked by a low retaining wall striped with white. At the sight of it, Sergeant Barnes flashes you a grin and stashes the map. There's a figure waiting in the lee of that wall, a fellow officer with the silver bars of a captain upon his collar and a dreaded clipboard in his hand. You're nearly late, Lieutenant, the field umpire notes as he regards you. The pencil in his grasp has doomed plenty of officers to obscurity with a swift judgment. Field umpire with dreaded clipboard. This image was taken during the field maneuvers of the 3rd Army in Louisiana. Modern warfare makes it essential that personnel of all grades have the ability to read maps and aerial photographs. The detailed study of maps assists higher-level commanders in arriving at their tactical decisions. Elementary map and aerial photograph reading, Field Annual 2521, page 1, entry 3. Nod to him. The field umpire shakes his head slightly. Officers salute when appropriate, he notes. As a field exercise has not begun, a salute would ordinarily be warranted. So, thank you for the clarification, sir. Sarcasm notes how sharp-tongued a character is. Sarcasm does not have any impact on a tactical scenario. Being sarcastic may provide some chrome during the interactive fiction. Remain silent as is proper, no change to sarcasm, or he certainly is setting the tone here. We will remain silent. Today you will undertake a leadership exercise consisting of no less than 3 separate field problems, the field umpire says. You and your men will be assessed based on outcomes including both objectives achieved and casualties sustained. You will take command of your rifle squad and we will proceed. Any questions? Men of the 21st Engineers Aviation on alert inside bomb splinter and gas-proof shelter at an airport used by air forces of the Red Army during the Carolina maneuvers. Shelter constructed by the 21st Engineers, image courtesy of the new entry. So, is this a live fire exercise? Where's my rifle squad? What is the mission for this field problem? Or no questions mentally read. What's the mission for this field problem? We'll get to that shortly, the field umpire says. They like their surprises, Sergeant Bennett remarks softly for you. Where's my rifle squad? Over there, the umpire says and waves a hand across the field. It should not be hard to find. Where's the rest of my platoon? Your Sergeant Grant is bringing them forward after they complete the obstacle course, the field umpire says. For now, you'll command a single squad of your platoon. Sergeant Grant isn't a fellow to be late. I'm sure of it, Sergeant Bennett says to you quietly. There's every reason to be hopeful. Bennett is the platoon sergeant, and Grant, what the Army currently calls the platoon guide, has his confidence. That's all my questions. Mentally review what to do. We just need to find the squad, Sergeant Bennett says. Doubt we'll need more than a few waypoints on the map to figure out where they're at. Lead the way. The squad is not far away. This path may use the fewest movement points, but it doesn't utilize terrain. Waypoints are vital to using terrain to your advantage. The route that uses the least movement points is not always the best one. Control-click to establish waypoints and stick to covering terrain when possible. That in mind, you lead the way. So mission, finish the exercise before turn 4, and the men don't get anyone killed. So this is what we were talking about a little bit before. There's a tension between the men and the mission. Now, you sometimes, in I guess a perfect world, may be able to do both. But you usually don't include something like this unless you're going to face people with very difficult choices. Alright, left click to select all units in a hex, to right click to move them. Control right click a hex to set a waypoint. One order may move a unit many hexes. This reminder may seem repetitive, and it is. Moving units, especially through mixed terrain, is an infantryman's lot. The more difficult the march, the tougher the fight at the end. Alright. So I'm going to ignore what it says here using a single order. I'm actually going to try the waypoint. Well done, Lieutenant, the umpire notes. You avoided a sniper call. Most officers have proven blind to that. Our squad looks beat, Sergeant Bennett says. It's true. By all appearances, they can't possibly take another step. Some might say their morale is low. Right now, it's dog-dick low, like they've been suppressed by enemy fire. But they don't have to stay that way, do they, Lieutenant? 2nd Corps Provisional Anti-Tank Battalion, commanded by Major H.R. Johnson. Company D, 190th Infantry, is shown firing an 81mm mortar, image courtesy of the new entry. There are no bullets in maneuvers, and things sometimes get a little dull, but play the game. Don't lie in the shade. Don't pretend you're manning an anti-aircraft gun or a machine gun while you are lying down. Be on your toes. If an aircraft comes over you, track it with your gun and pretend you are shooting the hell out of it. If a tank or an infantryman approaches you who is an enemy, do the same thing. Play the game. Martin Blumenson, The Patent Papers, 1940 to 1945, pages 32 to 33. So what would you suggest, Sergeant? Directness -1. Directness is one of 3 character traits. It reflects the approach of a leader to problems, subtle or otherwise. Directness does not impact the tactical battlefield, but may add some chrome to conversation. I could give them a speech for verbosity. They will obey my commands, or consider kicking them into shape. What would you suggest, Sergeant? An order, Lieutenant, Sergeant Bennett says. And if you go with them and share their risks, then they will follow. And if any of them don't, then I kick a little ass. So morale is central. Orders might be the fuel, but morale is the engine. Good morale will take you far. Bad morale will only roll backwards. So good morale, firefights, 50-50 you win. Full orders, movement normal, you will pass most morale checks. Moderate morale shaken, firefights, enemy is likely to win. Movement reduced towards the enemy. You fail most morale checks. And bad morale cowering. Enemy wins firefights. 1 order, no movement towards the enemy. And fail morale checks.
Thank you, Sergeant Bennett. Sergeant Bennett is reminding me I need to teach you about the backbone of your company's performance. It's morale. So here we have a good order squad. It's green, no suppression, has 2 orders, moves about 3 hexes. If it tries to move under fire, pass the morale check to do that, about 70%. And if it fires at an enemy, 50-50. Now notice those initiative wheels, donuts I like to call them. You really want to win initiative, because if you win initiative, you fire first, you suppress the enemy, reduce their morale, and then their fire back will be weak. Now let's look by contrast at this shaken company. It's yellow. It's lost about half its morale to suppression. First thing to notice, subtly, is it only moves 2 squares forward. It can still retreat because they're more cautious because they're shaken. Also, let's notice one more thing, only 1 order. So the morale is actually reduced the total quantity of actions you can give this squad. Pretty bad. And guess, if you fire them, not going to go so well. You're going to lose. And the morale checks, unlikely. Finally, let's look at these poor guys. About 9 points of suppression. They're red. They're basically cowering. They won't even move forward. Though you can still move them back to get rallied, maybe behind a hill or in some cover. I wouldn't bother trying to fire. Not going to work. And you can give up on assault. Now, friend, let's have a little fun here. This is a 3-star unit. Very experienced. What do you notice? It's got 3 orders, not 2. That's a big win. And guess how it's going to do in firefights? Very well. And guess how it's going to do on morale checks? Hey, it doesn't even have to pass a morale check to move under fire. Work hard, Captain. Maybe you'll have units like this eventually. Lead them well.
I feel I'm going to get replaced, Oswin. All right, rally will remove suppression. It will also expend all of the squad's, not the leader's, remaining orders. So time to rally. To rally, a unit must not have expended any orders during the turn. It must be fresh. So the squad has expended an order. It is no longer fresh. The squad has merely lost an order to suppression. It is still fresh. The squad has expended all of its orders. It is spent. The fresh status is only determined by whether or not the squad has expended an order yet. Orders lost to suppression don't count. Orders expended for any other reason do. So this one, I will admit, is a little tricky to identify because it doesn't seem to indicate fresh on its own. Essentially, you kind of need to know. But on the other hand, you're the one who would be controlling the unit, so ideally that's not going to cause a lot of confusion. Your men want guidance and leadership, and that's why you are here with them. Most leaders must be grouped up with a squad to utilize certain orders. A captain would be an exception to that, but you do not worry about this right now because all you have currently is a single lieutenant. Index Gnome, good to see you. Okay, select the leader, then then rally them. Rallying with a squad will improve suppression at the cost of all of the orders for that squad. Leaders pay only the order cost. Rallying a squad also requires that the squad not have expended any orders during the turn. Left-click to select all the units in the hex, then left-click the rally button, and then right-click the unit. So here's the rally button. Right-click. That did the trick, Sergeant Bennett says. Once we're organized, we can get on with the exercise. The field umpire makes a little note on his clipboard. The men will be ready, but the question is, for what? Our purpose in assembling both empires and unit commanders here this morning is threefold. First, I want all of you to meet each other. Second, I want to reiterate the tactical doctrines of this division so that commanders will enter the forthcoming maneuvers with our desires clear in their minds, and so that the umpires will know what we are trying to do. Martin Blumenson, The Patent Papers, 1940 to 1945, page 33. So, should I move the squad first? The trouble with that is moving any number of hexes takes orders, and if the unit is spent or if it has expended any orders, then it is not fresh and it may not rally. You would have to wait until the next turn for its orders to refresh so that it can rally. But yes, sometimes you will want to move a unit away from enemies before you rally so that the unit won't get shot up afterwards. It's enough that the men are on their feet. If the enemy doesn't interrupt, the men will be ready to move shortly. You indicate as much to the umpire. He holds up a white flag for his opposite number across the field to see. A wave of blue flags are exchanged. The exercise will shortly resume. So long as either side has a leader with an order, the turn won't end, unless both sides pass the round without spending any orders. So green dot, order available, gray dot, order expended, any solid square, a morale point, empty gray square, suppression, red cross square, stress. Every morale point, 10% effectiveness, 12 morale, 120, 3 morale, 30%. At a glance, green is good, yellow suggests caution, and red means something dangerous.
Anyone got a light?
All right, end the round repeatedly to end the turn. Each game turn is broken up into alternating rounds. When both sides pass their round without action, the turn will end. This will be covered in detail later. The shortcut to the end of the round is to end the round is spacebar. We'll just hit the button here, though. And once more, because we need to make sure that we're passing when the enemy passes. Impulsive chess. You are ready. The men are ready. The enemy is likely ready. The enemy had a round to activate units, but did nothing with it. Interesting that the enemy did nothing in response. Wonder what the clipboard wants to happen next, Sergeant Bennett asks quietly. As if on cue, the field umpire clears his throat. All right, Lieutenant, the enemy squad is in that house down there, he says, and ignores Bennett as he points. You can hear the clockwork tick of his watch, faint but steady. Deploy your men and take them under fire. Remember, this exercise is timed. I'm very insistent that all commanders have an umpire take him absolutely into their confidence. He is not a stool pigeon or a hostile spy. If he knows what you are trying to do, he can be useful and be at the point of combat. If he does not know what is going to happen, he is simply unnecessary baggage. Martin Blumenson, The Patent Papers, 1940 to 1945. We shouldn't refight the last war. The last World War saw trench conflict for hundreds of miles. Often little was gained at the cost of much blood. Original description for this photo. This is how the modern doughboy armed with semi-automatic Garand rifle will appear when he shows his firepower to the enemy. The terrible destructiveness of modern weapons turned World War I into a bloody, hopeless war of stalemate and attrition. Officers who had spent their whole careers preaching the decisiveness of the attack and assault now favored the defense. John C. McManus, American Courage, American Carnage, 7th Infantry Chronicles, Kindle location 4572. Movement in the trees. A dozen men and more in olive drab, working their way closer. These are your men, sweaty and dusted from the obstacle course. At the back is Sergeant Grant, urging the stragglers along. Sergeant Grant has arrived with reinforcements. No rest for the wicked, not in this army. I get you, Lieutenant, Sergeant Bennett says. We're out here to train so we can fight. When we're facing off against the Germans, we'll have to fight like we trained. The men may not like it, and they'll sure as hell gripe about it, but Grant over there will get them in gear. I trained him myself. The platoon is together again, if not precisely formed up in the best position. While you ponder that fact, the umpire's watch continues to tick. Let's bolster their spirits, Sergeant Bennett says. That always boosts morale, though it doesn't last for long, but maybe it will be just long enough for what comes next.
Remember Sergeant Bennett's wise comment that morale is the backbone of your company's performance? Well, what do you think the role of leadership is then? Of course, it's to manage that morale. Let's look at your tools. One of them is bolster. So here we have a good order unit. And if we were to attack, it'd be 50-50 on the attack. It moves 3 squares. It has 70% morale check. But let's bolster it. A lot more movement. Hey, it's going to pass the morale check. And look at the firefight. Bolster enhances an already good unit so it is significantly more effective, especially for firefights. The experience and the trust of the leader comes to bear. Don't make the mistake, however, of thinking of bolster as sort of a poor man's rally, rally for one action. I've moved the leader down to this shaken squad, half morale, and I'm thinking, well, it's pretty poor for a firefight right now. Maybe I'll bolster it and it'll be fine. Well, there's some improvement. If you studied this, you'd see the suppressed predictions are a little bit better, but you're still going to lose initiative. It's not a rally. If you want a unit with shaken or below morale to improve, rally. Rally, by contrast, fully restores morale for the long term. Of course, it does take a turn to do. So you'll have to pick the time and place for when you rally, for when you bolster, or for when you orchestrate your platoon and company to be effective all at once, rather than dribble in an attack on the enemy.
A bolster order will provide a boost to the morale of a unit until that unit moves, shoots, or does anything else that has the unit expend an order. Unlike rally, this does not remove suppression, but a bolster can boost a unit's maximum morale beyond its maximum. Bolster greatly increases initiative in a firefight and the chance to initiate an assault. So good morale, firefights, 50-50 to win without bolster. Firefights, your leadership increases the chance to win initiative, suppressing the enemy before they can fire back. You succeed far more on assaults. Movement is increased, maybe flank now. You can pass most morale checks, most useful on already good morale. Bolster the leader and the squad. Bolster improves the morale of units for their next order. They will move further, shoot better, and fight harder. Bolstering consumes 1 leader order. Left click to select all units in the hex. Left click the bolster button, and then right click the units. We're ready, Sergeant Bennett says. Where to, LT? Should we have Grant march down or go ahead? Time to make a decision. There are a lot of things you might want to order, but there is never enough time for the men to carry those out. Nonetheless, you can prepare to do what you can. Okay. Prefer if I can. All right. So it's not great to put them through the open field, but I do want them, 1, protected, and 2, to get up ahead. There they are, Sergeant Bennett says, as your men pass the word that they've sighted movement in the house. But those damn walls give them better cover than anything we've got. Nearby, the umpire with the clipboard makes a note, a lengthy one. Okay, let's prepare to open fire. Give the men some direction and the umps will take note, Sergeant Bennett says as your men prepare to place the revealed enemy in their crosshairs. Every little bit helps us build our fire up against them before they do the same to us. Left click to select the unit you want to have open fire, then right click the enemy. This will consume 1 squad order. Okay, so it seems to me like we can't fire here just because we've already used up the movement, but I'm thinking we move up here. Now that was already bolstered. Oh, but we're already flanking them, so. I know our umpire is pushing us forward, but our squad just opened fire without a plan, Sergeant Bennett says. I'll bet we could get as good as the Jerrys if we have time to. Unsupervised and poorly invigorated fire likely resulted in little suppression, the field umpire remarks, and writes something sharply in the margin of his clipboard sheet. Now, I think this was an okay move, given the fact that it already gave some good, it gave some good indicators. But I don't. This does not strike me as somebody who's going to be happy with any decision I make. Samuel Shrewsbury Sr., house in Bell, West Virginia, image courtesy of Magnolia 677. Whistles blow, the exercise halts as the umpires get to work figuring out the damage to the enemy. Sergeant Bennett waits quietly beside you. Halt the exercise, the field umpire barks and signs the bottom of the page with a flourish. Lieutenant, you pushed ahead and did not form up your platoon prior to attack. This would have resulted in some of your men getting killed and additional time wasted while you regrouped for a proper assault against a now prepared enemy. He is not there to be your friend, field umpire during the field maneuvers in the Third Army in Louisiana, 1942. Nod. By moving too early, you could maneuver your men into an unwinnable predicament. That possibility is worrisome. So, wait, what were my marks today? Further discuss the issue of victory or defeat. We did all this, and for what? Prestige is the measure, or see to the men. We will see to the men. The umpire is in charge here and of higher rank. There is no point in arguing or protesting, especially not when the platoon needs to be organized. Sergeant Bennett falls in as you head back to your platoon. No matter what you chose, that ump was going to find fault, Sergeant Bennett says. Like being married, but without the fun parts. Hell, I bet getting something wrong was the point of the lesson. Moving just one squad ahead of the others was a bold choice too, can't deny that. And if it had been an ambush, well, you'd be saving lives. There was no good answer? We learn more from failure than success, Lieutenant, Sergeant Bennett says, but you only had to learn this lesson once, not teach it 100 times. What is it that I'm actually supposed to learn? How to lead, Sergeant Bennett replies. Not just when things are going well either, and maybe that's why there was no good answer here, because there may not be one over there. It was a lot to take in. You will have to keep your eyes and ears open. Click to access the Bakopedia for tactics, hints, and help. All right, first stage of boot camp is done. No one out of action, sir. We will not exit before the story continues. But would you folks mind if I took a quick break?
A good leader needs to be able to think ahead, anticipate a situation, and make a decision based on the best information available.
I was hoping to take a quick tea break just to reheat the kettle and such. Would everybody be okay with that? I'll try to keep it short, but I just I'm still kind of wearing off the rest of the day, so I just wanted to see whether or not people were okay with just taking a couple minutes to get some refreshment, and then we can move on to the next scenario. Barring any comments, I'm just going to run and do it. But go make tea. All right. Sounds good. By the way, I didn't say this before, but Oswin Meow is a lovely streamer who was actually watching someone play. Is it Black King Wukong? Anyways, definitely a streamer worth watching. Somebody who's doing some Book of Hours most recently. But we can talk about that when I get back. I'll see you all in a little bit. Now would be a good time to get up, have a stretch, maybe get a cup of tea yourself. Otherwise, take care of yourselves, and we'll be back with Burden of Command in just a little bit. Okay, sorry about the wait there. Let me just take a minute to get everything set back up. All right, at last the fighting dies down. Dick Winter, eventually a major with the 101st Airborne during his early training in the U.S. Army. Damian Lewis narrates the leadership journey, video and images, time hack 840, courtesy of the World War II Foundation. For those of you, it's kind of hard not to reference Band of Brothers. Definitely a good, definitely a very good series, and I think probably one that, like, I don't know. I've always kind of had the view that you, where possible, kind of want things to sort of stand on their own, and I think being able to say, a game that tries and takes the psychology of being responsible for, for your men. Needing to do a job while also making sure that you take care of the people under you. I think that is interesting on its own. However, obviously Band of Brothers is dealing with a particularly memorable and noteworthy group of people. And it does a very good job of sort of dramatizing that. And of course, the difference here is that in the case of a game, you have that level of interactivity and you're able to sort of build some systems and some consequences. And so as a result, you're able to sort of model those kinds of decisions and those experiences. So essentially what it does is it might be taking themes that you would see inside of Band of Brothers, but in this case, it's representing them in a way that is unique to gaming as opposed to just something that you'd sit down and watch. And I don't mean to suggest, I did have a background in film. I think it is possible to have a film be something more than just something that you passively absorb. But I do think that there is something to be said for being able to think about those cases where you can communicate something in a way that's really unique to gaming and interactive forms. And so, again, it's perfectly fine to reference something like Band of Brothers, but I do think it's always nice to sort of highlight how you can have two different entertainment products, ones that are trying to sort of maybe punch above their weight, but still entertainment products, how they're dealing with the same topic, but how they're dealing with them in ways that are sort of unique to the form that they take. All right, draw. The referees called it a draw. Nothing you could do about it for both the mission and the men. So this is my duty. Why are you in the army? Duty. This will help me defend those I love, or they drafted me for this shit. This is my duty. And just like that, the exercise is over. The next will begin shortly. Line of sight varies with terrain. Okay. So this is one thing I actually quite like for the Your World section. So greetings from Camp Pickett, Virginia. Are you a girl with a star-spangled heart? Join the WAC now, the Women's Army Corps, United States Army. Thousands of Army jobs need filling. One of the exhibits I actually quite like in the Canadian War Museum is it does deal with women at war. And one of the things I really liked about it, and I think this is maybe just a me thing, but learning little details about how people kind of got through the time. So for instance, the idea of sort of drawing a seam along the back of your leg so that it would seem like you're wearing pantyhose, which wasn't necessarily available at the time. Actually, I can answer this question, Oswin, because I think I can't remember if you were in here or not. I was actually an early tester on this. I don't know if they go into that in here, but there are definitely some women characters inside of it. So whether or not that counts as representation of women, I'll leave to the audience. But I do think that they actually make an effort in that regard. It's not just the historical images inside here. But yeah, again, one of the things I just kind of like about the exhibit, I think one of the reasons why I like it, I learned this a little bit more, just kind of the different weird jobs that I do, or some of the different people that I encounter and I hear about their things, right? Because every once in a while I live in the capital of Canada, so every once in a while, you'll run into somebody who has an interesting job or one of those things that you always imagine other people do. And I'm always really struck by the practical details, right? So, it's actually a real pain to, to commute to X, Y, or Z building, or, you know, this one actually used to be, a bunker or something like that. So again, when I talk about the drawing the line up sort of the back of the leg, and actually a good example here, not to dwell too much on it, but there was actually something that caught my attention when Oswin sort of talks about representation of women. One of the things that Canada needed to do sort of from a propaganda or a morale point of view was there was this idea that women who helped with the war effort, specifically did something with the army, let's say, there was sort of this rumor that they were loose women, that this was not something that proper people did too. And if you think about it, right, a war, you're fighting for your lives, maybe not so much as Britain was, but nothing good happens if the war gets anything less than the full effort of the Allies. You need to nip that in the bud, right? This is absolutely a case where, nowadays, I'm sure there'd be some culture war stuff about this, but there's actually a very practical problem of people's tendency for gossip, where you have a certain portion of the population that's going to be sent to fight overseas. But there is still a war effort that at home, right? And again, Canada has got some really amazing war propaganda posters. I can remember one in particular where there's basically like this hand, which is like holding up waterfalls, hydroelectric power, and it says like, "This is our strength." It is the most badass poster I have ever seen. It made me so proud to be Canadian. And again, attack on all fronts, and you have both. You have the soldier with the gun, but you also have someone with a rivet gun, and you have someone with a hoe, because again, an army needs food, an army needs equipment. It's not just the people shooting the guns that have a role to play. And so again, what do you think of when you play? What do you think of when you play a game like Command and Conquer? Well, you think about moving your little men and shooting, and you'll probably have some thought of logistics, and you'll probably think a bit about how you're gathering resources. But in the end, most real-time strategy games, you're going to be focusing a lot on moving the people in certain areas and making sure that you capture the points that will give you the resources that you need to make that big push against the enemy. And that's fine, because again, it's something that it abstracts away a lot of things because you need to be thinking on your feet. But if you think about a broader war effort, then yes, it is more than just the people on the front line. You actually need to think about how all of this stuff is created. And that can mean, how do you fill those gaps? And if you have sort of a societal tendency that allows that gap to widen, you need to deal with that. And you sometimes need to deal with that in very unorthodox ways. So, and again, likewise, to bring it back specifically to Burden of Command, in this case here, sure, I think the leadership role is something that we're not unfamiliar with in a lot of games. But the idea of the leadership role and some very specific implications that it has for your ability to do your job and how it affects the people under you, that's something that isn't often explored. And so, like I said, I know sometimes people just want to see the gameplay and things like that, but I definitely feel like for a game like this, it is actually worth taking the time to actually read these details, specifically because if you don't appreciate the setting, if you don't appreciate the context, then maybe those decisions aren't quite going to have the same impact. Suffice to say, I think this is more than just flavor. So. Back us up in a war job. See the U.S. Employment Service Representative, the War Manpower Commission. Yes, the tutorial actually has multiple parts. So this is the part that was introducing sort of the idea of orders. I don't really think it dealt too much with how the firefights go. I think there's going to be one with a little bit more detail, and I don't know. Following officers assigned as umpires for, so this is a sheet I'll Save it here. All right. Aid your men cheat sheet. Click anywhere to continue. So resources to spend on your men. Mouse over for more. Captain earns extra trust and XP based on the men versus mission performance. You can see. So there is also, I should maybe mention here that in terms of your ability to improve your squad, the men versus mission sort of dilemma does actually have some very specific gameplay consequences. That if you prioritize the mission, you may be able to do some things that that you wouldn't, but again, that will potentially come at the cost of some other things, which we will show in just a moment. During training, aid is more limited. Click anywhere to continue. Click a portrait on the right and to review your men, or the question mark button at the bottom for more help. So let's see here. So I can give myself help a subordinate leader learned from recent missions and success, increase XP by 25 at the cost of 5 prestige. Unit XP represents not only learning battle tactics, but also an internal bond between soldiers. This is 2 loyalty, 2 so I could boost 2 of these for the individual soldiers. Yeah, I think we'll... spread it around here. Continue your journey. I think we're back to the extended so this did sort of resolve itself. One thing is, I do believe I put this on my hard drive rather than solid state, but I don't think there's that much. Okay.
Well, it was infantry. Infantry is different than cavalry.
So what?
We didn't have horses, but they had light tanks. The cavalry did.
So what kind of training then would you have in the infantry?
Bayonet. The bayonet. Hand grenade. You don't throw a hand grenade like a baseball. You lob it.
24th September 1942, Camp Pickett, Virginia. The soldiers of your platoon are weary in their boots as they march back to their starting places. The morning run and the recent field problem have both clearly taken their toll. Platoon Sergeant Bennett glances your way, and the unspoken question of whether to quicken or slacken the pace lingers between you. Let them rest, they're worn out, the men will be ready for the coming exercise and suffer no suppression. They will also acquire no experience. Have them pick up the pace, the men will be slightly fatigued and suffer very little suppression. They will also acquire very little experience. Experience will eventually increase performance, or double time. The men will be fatigued and suffer a little suppression. They will also acquire a little experience. No, this is training. Bennett passes along the order, your order followed by a few choice insults to put the men into columns. The men gripe about this until they're doing double time. At the assembly area, the field umpire with the captain's bars gives a little nod and recites his expected line. This field problem concerns fire and movement, culminating with an assault upon an objective. Except this time, your platoon will have support from your company's weapons platoon. Burden of Command is a game about leadership, because without leadership, men are just a mob instead of soldiers. These history tabs will reveal the sources behind our design. There is a soul to an army as well as to the individual man, and no general can accomplish the full work of his army unless he commands the soul of his men, as well as their bodies and legs. William Tecumseh Sherman, as quoted in Atkinson, An Army at Dawn, Kindle Location 248. Heavy weapons coming up, Lieutenant, Sergeant Bennett notes as a dozen men from the weapons platoon hustle over. They don't have any real 30 cals yet, just logs painted black. Those are supposed to be as heavy as the real thing, but the beefy officer leading the weapons platoon carries a log as if it were no heavier than a baseball bat, Lieutenant Stern. So, hey Stern, we're about to kick it off. Wave Stern over, or the field umpire will take care of things. Sure enough, the field umpire waves Stern over. You're almost late, Lieutenant, the field umpire notes. It was a long run from the target range, Stern replies evenly, but it'll be the Krauts who will be doing the running when we take a crack at him. Yes, well, today's objective is for a combined arms assault on the farmhouse down there, the field umpire says, and points to the little house in the distance. Time will be, as it ever is, a factor. Stern certainly is eager, at least the umpire is staying focused, or wait until it is clear the umpire is done talking. Stern looks your way. Tell me what to hit, and we'll hit it hard enough for you to schlep right over, he says, then glances down at the 30 cal in his hands and chuckles. Well, we'll pretend to, anyway. Back to your platoons, lieutenants, the field umpire says to you both. You are allowed only limited communication while the exercise is paused. In particular, the weapons platoon will be initially unavailable. Rifles first because, the field umpire replies, we want to see how your men perform with their rifles before we include the machine gun. Stern gives you a knowing nod at the news. As the two of you depart for your different platoons, you consider how best to develop this field problem. Your 3 rifle squads are organized as part of the first platoon. The machine gun and the mortar are part of the weapons platoon. Each platoon has a leader in command. Stern is in charge of the weapons platoon. So rifle squad, shooting expends up to 2 orders, only 1 order to move. Machine gun team, 1 order to shoot, 2 to move. Mortar squad, 2 orders to shoot, 2 orders to move. And leader, 1 order to move or shoot, may use bolster, rally, and press. We've got everything but tanks, Sergeant Bennett remarks. Each platoon will have a different role to play.
Bennett tells me you're progressing, LT. So today we get to talk about tactics, not just mechanics. Without further ado, why don't we go to, I think, the core of how we're different from most tactical games that the casual gamer or others might be familiar with, namely bang, 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 you're dead games. This is true a fair number of tactical World War II games too, but I don't think of reality. You know, people don't want to die. You fire at them, they're going to get down behind the stone wall, and your bullets aren't going to do much. So, instead you need what's called the 4Fs. So here we are in Germany. You've got elements of a rifle platoon, you've got Germans up north, and your goal is to suppress them first. You're not going to succeed in killing them, they're in pretty good cover, and they're going to put their heads down. So you've started firing, but it's not just bang, bang, bang even for suppression. You have to be smart, you have to use your leadership, you have to bolster. Improving their fire. The leader is directing the fire here. He's using a heavy weapon, which is intimidating, higher rate of fire, puts more bullets around the squad. And, you know, when you hear bullets whizzing by, you start to be suppressed, meaning you're keeping your head down. And you can see the color bars here are telling us the state of the enemy's morale. They've gone from green to yellow, and they will shortly be at red. So he's been doing an effective job here. He's suppressed. A
whistle blows. The field problem begins. Finish the exercise before turn 2 and don't get anyone killed. Alright. Select the squad. Shoot. Rifle squads shoot up to 5 hexes away. Shooting will consume up to 2 orders. Shooting through the woods will not provide the enemy with cover. But the building they are in certainly will. Now, I thought it said we didn't have the machine gun right away, but... So it's recommending that I go with this squad, but I actually think it would be better to start here. So let's see if we can get away with it. Oh, I screwed up. We didn't have a shot. We weren't able to aim at them. I've really gone and done it now. Oh, hang on. Now, presumably they're going to be able to recover a little bit of this from their officer, but then we'll be able to clean them up with the rest of the turn. Okay, so this is going to get a little tricky just because I need to make sure that I can clean them up, but Stonewall stop bullets, Lieutenant, Sergeant Bennett says, but they're not invincible over there. We've got firepower. Let's make them keep their heads down until Stern is ready. Second squad, prepare to fire. In Burden of Command, cover is very important, both for the attacker and the defender. The enemy will shoot back if they can, and the slightest bit of cover or concealment can mean the difference between a near miss and a casualty. Or, as Lieutenant General Leslie put it, we are not here to take it, we are here to give it. You give the order and your men take aim. The enemy is already partially suppressed, so this should be a little easier. Now they want me to shoot this enemy. I'm curious if... well, you know what? We're already kind of pounding them right now, so I think in this case here... Oh yeah, they are in cover, so I think we should just keep doing our thing. He signals Sergeant Grant across the way. He replies with equal vigor and gets the other squad into position. A glance through your binoculars reveals Private Rogers as the soldier squints through the circular iron sights at a distant target. Beside him is Private Hancock, who apparently has again mislaid his protective ears on either side of his submachine gun sights, no doubt to remove something he considers a distraction. Equipment and weaponry were pathetic. Soldiers trained with drain pipes for anti-tank guns, stovepipes for mortar tubes, and brooms for rifles. Money was short, and little guns were cheaper than big ones. No guns were cheapest of all. Rick Atkinson, An Army at Dawn, The War in North Africa, 1942 to 1943. So one thing I actually really like about the training scenarios in this is that it does communicate something that I don't know... Like, I don't know if this is something that is commonly understood or if the... Because, I mean, my context for this as well as being a Canadian, but is the idea that, and it referred to it earlier, that the U.S. Army was not sort of the force that we tend to think of it, even in the context of World War II. It was small and underprepared. It was some of the greenest troops that were deployed. And that, you know, George Marshall is this really big figure, definitely somebody who's very well respected for a number of his accomplishments, but probably one of the most impressive is to be able to just sort of take this very, very rough material and shape it into something that was ultimately able to have the effect that it did. Like, these are things that, again, just don't just happen. It actually requires a focused effort. And so it's neat to be able to see, while you're learning the game, to also understand a little bit of context in terms of being able, in terms of just maybe seeing, all right, these are people who are practicing with wood. They don't even have a real gun in their hands. Staff Sergeant Grant, first platoon guide, and so do a little shooting myself, eventually gain 1 XP. Remember to ask Hancock about his weapon later, or keep my weapon slung. Do a little shooting myself. With that ammo, the trigger does not move, but you've been on the range enough to know that it would kick hard. Trouble is, at this range, the iron sight nearly covers the target. That's probably it for rifle work, Sergeant Bunt says as the referees make their calculations, but we could give them a taste of 30 cal instead. Same rounds, but a lot more of them, if we had permission to use a radio. No radios are available. However, we do have flags. The umpire waves at a set of flags marked radio. You can always send a runner, of course. Slower, but more reliable if they don't get shot. Platoon Sergeant, 1st Platoon. 30 cal. Any 30 cal weapon, but most commonly 30 cal machine guns. Gordon Rotman, in his book Fubar, something up beyond all recognition. Should have opened fire with the MG first. The rifles did some work. The MG can do more, or what I really want to employ is the mortar. Should have opened fire with the MG first. If the umpire had not limited you... So, I mean, again, we obviously did what the tutorial didn't tell us to do. If the umpire had not limited you, then Stern's machine guns would have fired first, hit hard, and suppressed the enemy at a range that the enemy's rifles could not have replied. Signal Stern with flag. Send a runner. You send a runner over to the weapons platoon, he'll carry the orders you want. All the while, the enemy keeps their heads down. End the round, and then activate Stern.
We further reinforce that sense of limited command and control by dividing the turn into leader rounds. If it's your leader round, you only get to lead your men, and you don't get to lead them doing Stern's leader rounds. There's another reason we do leader rounds, to emphasize another coordination problem, namely coordinating your company of 4 distinct platoons, independently led. That's not easy, and so the rounds force you to choose what platoon is doing what. And there's a last reason. The military likes to say, the enemy gets a vote, meaning they're not going to sit quietly while you do all the wonderful things you'd like to do. They might want to do things that interrupt your plan. Kind of like happens in chess. You get a move, they get a move.
In just a little bit, the real star of this show will become the machine guns. Those can spit out a lot of firepower under Stern's command. Earlier theorists aimed to equip the conduct of war with principles, rules, or even systems, and thus considered only factors that could be mathematically calculated, e.g. numerical superiority, supply the base, interior lines. All these attempts are objectionable, however, because they aim at fixed values. In war, everything is uncertain and variable, intertwined with psychological forces and effects, and the product of continuous interaction of opposites. Clausewitz on war. Coordination takes time, Sergeant Bennett says, as the two of you watch Stern's men set up shop. No way around that, even if we had real radios. So I think the reason why it actually told me to do Stern later, if you think about the way that this turn works, so we could start with the rifles, and then the enemy retaliates. So in this case, maybe they restore their morale. And then you do Stern's turn, where again, he kicks the hell out of the enemy. But what happens is that the enemy is starting suppressed in the next turn, and that won't happen this time around. So I don't know. We'll see.
That end toward the enemy.
Oh, apparently we have one more. I think in this case, I'm going to settle for a rally. And yeah, we really don't have anything else to do here, so. Field umpire makes a note on his clipboard. Can't knock the lieutenant here for being slow, Sergeant Bennett says to the field umpire. The important thing is making an assault that isn't bloody and stupid. Sergeant, you forget yourself, the field umpire remarks. Plenty of cold steel in store for the enemy as Private James H. Walker, John H. Fisher, Charles Sandak, John Hodery, Corporal Frank Zavlatsky, and Private Peter Brodish form a ring of steel. The enemy certainly is toughing it out over there. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm gonna bolster again.
Get the 30 cal ready.
That's a sound to hear and fear, especially since the machine gun is firing at the enemy beyond the effective range of their rifles, Sergeant Bennett declares, and that's before they get a taste of the mortar. Nearby, the field umpire checks his watch. Battles are won by frightening the enemy. Fear is induced by inflicting death and wounds on him. Death and wounds are produced by fire. Fire from the rear is more deadly and 3 times more effective than fire from the front. Blumenson Martin, the patent papers. So everything is timed. The umpires are more persistent than subtle. Get on with it. Umpires are more persistent than subtle. That was a lot of firepower, worth the weight of carrying it forward, Sergeant Bennett says, but if we really want to make them huddle and puddle in their boots, we'll need the mortars. Lieutenant Stern will spot the fall of his unit's mortar rounds from his location, the umpire indicates. That is the only way to ensure accuracy. A leader can direct artillery from his position. The mortars don't need to be able to see the enemy directly to lob shells at them. They just need Stern to be in a position to spot the fall of the rounds. The mortars could sit safely on the reverse slope of the hill and still contribute to the battle. In fact, that is the way they prefer to conduct themselves.
Lay it on them!
Now, I'm not actually quite ready to do that yet. I think we should fire one more time. Now, what I want to try and do here, I'm actually going to end the leader round. Interesting.
So, some of you will recognize this, but note there weren't any casualties. So, now we have to, ideally, flank and finish. And Dearborn, let's hope you can do the job here. So tree about sort of laying down the field work for success. There's a lot of games that focus on drama of melee, but from what I've read, for instance in Leo Murray's book, actually most assaults led to surrender or retreat because people suppressed don't really want bayonets in the stomach.
So I was trying to sort of second guess the game here a little bit, but a moment of calm amid the chaos. Consider the situation in depth.
So I've simplified here, but if you want more depth, The Real Rule of Small Arms in Combat, good 4-page article. War Games by advisor Leo Murray goes into some depth. I will say for most gamers we see in playtesting, this is a significant learning curve. They want bang, 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 you're dead. And they overdo it. We have to train them very hard to do the 4Fs. And with that, we have to train them to know the different types of units and their strength and weaknesses. Here's a bit of XCOM, 2 actions per unit. And I'll let this speak for itself for a moment. Kind of your all-around guys. Notice they're getting into flanking position. Remember, 4Fs. This is our maneuver element. This is our fire base, ideally with good leadership, unless you sent the leader to help with the assault. And you can move the machine gun, but then if you do that, they won't be able to fire, right? It's a trade-off. We also have, I think I'll be demonstrating mortars, off-board artillery, smoke, armor. Let's let the mortar speak for themselves now. Notice there's a line of sight blockage with the trees, but the spotter helped you. We model spotting. So your leader may creep up and direct indirect fire from behind the hill. It's combined arms to do the 4Fs. Can't miss a patent quote when you have the chance.
The Army employs field maneuvers for field problems, and they have revised those recently. There we go, Lieutenant, Sergeant Bennett says as a moment of calm phase. There ain't nothing a soldier can do about a shell that has his name on it. However, the squad isn't considered dead, merely pinned, the field umpire notes. And they'll stay that way unless you execute an assault to either take prisoners or force them to retreat. Bang, bang, bang will not take positions or prisoners. A squad will just hunker down behind cover and wait things out. That is why you need to make an assault. If you want to take a position and prisoners, you will have to assault. As General Patton said, few men are killed by bayonets, but many are scared by them. Having the bayonet fixed makes our men want to close. Only a threat to close will defeat a determined enemy. General Patton, Tactical and Technical Trends, number 30, July 29th, 1943. I'm on it. Let's take him in the flank, Sergeant Bennett says. No one fights hard if you hit him in the kidneys from the get-go. And if we can stay out of their sight, so much the better. When Stern ceases fire, you will attempt exactly that. Actual hand-to-hand combat in World War II was pretty rare. Exceptions include Stalingrad and Guadalcanal. A determined enemy may not be driven from his position by fire alone. Making full use of cover and concealment, he will often remain in his position until driven out in hand-to-hand combat. The bayonet, or the threat of it, therefore, is the ultimate factor in every assault. Field Manual 2325, Section 1, Paragraph 2. All right, so the logic that I had, the reason why I passed the turn and then went back to Stern was I was thinking that the officer here might have tried to renew his troops. So I wanted to wait one turn and then drop the mortar on him, but that wasn't necessary. So in this case, oh, I gotta swap over. So we will actually going to throw one more shot at them. So here we'll bolster.
That's the way!
And I want to see if I can add the... Yeah.
Yeah, heroes of the free fucking world here.
I know. Let's get it done. I'm with you on that.
That's the way, LT. Sergeant Bennett waves you over as the enemy soldiers in their red armbands run off. It'll be harder overseas, but we've got a method down here. Behind him, the field umpire ticks another box on his clipboard. Another enemy squad has been sighted, the field umpire notes. They were attempting to reinforce the objective and now have begun a counterattack. You must deal with them. Extra time added? Yes, the field umpire replies. 5 more minutes. Whistles blow. The exercise resumes at once. All right. Bye. Here we come. So not so great for my people, just because I don't have a lot of options in terms of fixing my... Okay, so they're already rallied. I don't really want to move people out from where I am here, so I think I can maybe do recon by fire. Now that's going to lose my option to fire if they move, but all right. I think that was a decent enough trade-off. The field umpire makes yet another note on his clipboard. That other enemy squad is still out there. We better use everything we've got on that enemy before we make an assault, Sergeant Bennett remarks. Rifles, MGs, mortars, and some harsh language for the men to hear before we fix bayonets and go in. Got a flight to catch tomorrow, so I'm off to bed. This looks like a fun game. Have a good stream. Thank you very much for stopping by, Oswald Meow. And I hope you don't have to get up too early, but I hope your flight goes well. Looking forward to catching you on your channel or mine. But rest well, and we'll speak again soon. Okay. So again, we want to knock these... We kind of want to knock these guys down, so we'll start with bolstering and then beating the crap out of them with the machine gun. And yeah, it's basically the same move over again. Ooh, missed him this time. So we will pass. So what I want to do here, they're not quite red yet. So in this case, I want to fire on... I do want to fire on the enemy. Okay, it looks like there was a casualty. But ideally we get... Okay, so they're not quite in the red yet. So I do have a couple of choices that I need to make. I'm trying to remember what the range for these guys are. I wonder if it says... All right, I'm going to hold back and say... So realistically, I don't think these guys are going to be able to contribute. So I think we just need to... So there's one of two things I want to try. Either I want to try firing on these guys and then press. The problem is I don't... No, I think I'm going to try the bolster and charge. The problem is that it's... they're not fully red yet, so...
Come on, get those bastards.
All right. The other squad is taken prisoner. No running off this time. Whistles blow. Now the exercise is truly over. The field umpire signals for you and Bennett to approach. All right. Minor victory for the men. Exercise complete. And apparently a draw for the mission. Continue with the story.
Being a strong leader also meant being able to rely on others to help get the job done. That included fellow soldiers who had vastly different strengths and weaknesses than his own.
And so this exercise is over. Korea Mountain in Georgia, and Dick Winters, eventually a major with the 101st Airborne during his early years in the U.S. Army. Damian Lewis narrates the leadership journey video at this time, Hack 1413, images courtesy of the World War II Foundation. The umpire's pencil makes a final note to the paperwork atop the clipboard. Mission draw finished the field problem on turn 3 according to the referee. Then minor victory, referees determined that casualties were minimal, below 10%. So development of the attack, minimal losses, the field umpire says, and the next exercise will not be so easy. You share a knowing look with Sergeant Bennett. Mentally consider the last exercise. An assault has many components. Find the enemy, fix them in place with fire superiority, flank them, and finish them with a bayonet assault. If we can do all that, the Germans will be sauerkraut for sure. I feel like I didn't have to do things in that order. You could fire the machine gun twice at the enemy, then hit them with the mortar before sending in the rifle squads to flank an assault. Alternatively, an immediate flank and assault might have risked much in hopes that a surprise would suffice. If successful, your other squads could be employed elsewhere. Speaking of which, your men gather up, all 3 squads. This is my platoon. To personalize your own officer, first right-click your leader portrait. Then click the Edit button. You can change your name, portrait, or the platoon's insignia. When you click on other officers, you can change their platoon's insignia, but not their name or portrait. Squad names can be changed. Current mindsets and details are also displayed, discussed later. Either way, next time belongs to the next exercise. Service Club, Camp Pickett, Virginia. Yep, story of a battle. There used to be, I thought you used to be able to zoom on this, but I'm not actually able to do that right now. Private Joe Lewis says, we're going to do our part and we'll win because we're on God's side. In formation with squads, echeloned to the right or left rear may be used to protect an exposed flank and permits maximum fire to be delivered promptly towards that flank. So leader, messenger, squad, 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 platoon sergeant, platoon guide, 2 squads forward, 1 squad back, platoon leader, messenger, squad, platoon sergeant, squad, squad, platoon guide, 1 squad forward, 2 squads back. Aid your men. Okay, so bunch of loyalty here. I'm trying to think which... I think I'm going to continue with my usual pattern here. Or does not determine who is right, only who is left. Bertrand Russell. September 1942, Virginia, the United States.
No, no. When we left Fort Leonard Wood, nobody knew where they were going. I mean, they just loaded us on the train, and in fact, we didn't know where we were going until we got close to somebody, how it got out, but somebody said we were going to Camp Pickett, Virginia.
24 September 1942, Camp Pickett, Virginia. Your men trudge down the road towards the next training site. A Jeep comes the other way, burdened with big green army bags, mail bags. Think that's our mail, Lieutenant? Sergeant Bennett asks. Given how the Jeep practically overflows with cargo, some of it has to be for Nickel Company. So there could be something from my parents, there could be something from my wife, or there could be something from my sweetheart. All right, sweetheart. Everyone has something waiting at home, and your someone writes often. The men are certainly distracted by the possibility of their own letters, too. Sergeant Grant glances between Bennett and yourself, clearly eager for orders. So no mailbags for us, keep marching. We get less loyalty, but more prestige. Flag down the Jeep, grab mail for later. We lose prestige for that. Double time march, lower trust, higher prestige. Or flag down the Jeep, schedule a break. Trust is how well your men react to your orders within the scenario. Prestige is how favorably your commanders perceive you. All right, we'll lose some prestige in order to gain the trust. You have Bennett flag down the Jeep, and your imposing sergeant does precisely that by standing in the middle of the road and daring the driver to run him down. A brisk discussion results in the transfer of an army sack filled with letters. And since regular rest breaks are part of marches, there is now one of those coming up. Now the men will have something something to do other than tend to their toes. Unidentified soldier wearing a Brodie helmet during the Carolina maneuvers on October 20th, 1941. Image from the Carolina Maneuvers snapshot, World War II, 266, World War II Papers, Military Collection, State Archives of North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina. I bet my Sally didn't write. She doesn't much like how the Army deals with her letters, Private Morris says to the lanky soldier marching beside him. Could be worse, Private Patterson remarks, briefly glancing down at the slightly more rotund Morris. The Army could try to read her writing. So give a little laugh, show your men you understand. Even chance of 5 trust. Have Sergeant Bennett quiet the men down, remind them why they're here, low chance of loyalty +1, or commence a marching cadence. Focus them forcibly, even chance of prestige +1. Let's see if we can recover the prestige that we lost. If the men want to talk and march, then they can adopt a cadence and do the same. You give the signal to Sergeant Bennett with a professional cough. He clears his throat. Say that in the Army, the coffee's mighty fine. It looks like muddy water and tastes like turpentine. Bennett calls out. The men respond. Soon enough, the men sing about the joys of undercooked chicken and killer biscuits, at least until the field umpire, the same one from earlier in the day, storms over. No singing. This is integrated company command operations, the field umpire with the clipboard says. His uniform is somehow crisp despite the heat, right down to the black band of the field umpire neatly set about his sleeve. The good news is that the next exercise is ready. The bad news is that you, Lieutenant, are not. Wait for the twist. This will not be a repeat of the last exercise, though, the field umpire says. Lieutenant Stern and Lieutenant Dearborn will be part of Blue Force. You yourself will be acting as their captain. You will have a limited time to consult with them. Limited time, sir? Sergeant Bennett says in your stead. How limited? The A11 wristwatch, durable, accurate, and not terribly expensive. Field umpire taps his watch lightly, then gestures towards a nearby rise. Hurry over the rise. Over the top of the rise, you find two lieutenants in the midst of conversation. Stern paces about, kicking pine cones up with every step. Across from him is a man of bearing, tall without needing height, his hands clasped lightly behind him, Lieutenant Dearborn. Ah, Lieutenant, Lieutenant Dearborn says as he turns to you. We were just discussing strategies while we wait upon the captain. I'm the captain for this field problem. Okay, Lieutenant Stern says without the slightest pause. Dearborn says nothing, but upon finding your gaze upon him, he tenders over a little nod of understanding at the situation. Camp Pickett was erected on the site of a former Conservation Corps camp near the small rural town of Blackstone, Virginia. It had everything that was needed to expand as the Army itself grew. What do you know about the enemy? What kind of tricks do the refs have for us? Stern, head out now. Tempting to do the suppression, but what kind of tricks do the refs have for us? Red Force isn't entirely in the buildings, unlike last time, Stern says. They spread out. Onto the flanks, likely as not, Dearborn adds. They would guard the obvious approach to our objectives. What do we know about the enemy? A reinforced platoon from Red Force, Dearborn says. At least one machine gun. I didn't hear anything about that in the briefing, Lieutenant Stern says. A very brief briefing. An umpire may have mentioned it in passing, Lieutenant Dearborn replies. A warning whistle blows in the distance. A flag goes up from a nearby radio men. The exercise is shortly to begin. For now, I am the captain. Let's get to it, Captain, Sergeant Bennett says. Captain is a wild card for orders. He can activate any unit in his company regardless of the active leader by using the Take Command button. Furthermore, a captain can bolster, press, and rally any squad in his company that is merely adjacent to him. In this scenario, you will play on the map as Captain Lamb so you can learn about the captaincy role. Captain provides flexibility with orders. A captain can take command of machine guns or mortars, even if a rifle platoon leader is currently leading. He can also bolster, press, or rally any company units that are adjacent, essentially allowing multiple platoons to act in tandem.
You may think tactical leadership is all about leading men in combat, difficult moral decisions. But frankly, a lot of it's about coordination, or what the military calls command and control. Wouldn't be a credible leadership RPG without some of that. And you've got some problems, LT. Look at you. You're inexperienced. You've got 4 orders to run 3 squads. Contrast the captain. He's got 5 stars. He's got 6 orders to run. Wouldn't it be nice if you had that? Well, maybe someday you will. Now, you're running a platoon. You're not running Stern's weapon platoon. You're running your 3 squads. And the interface reinforces your spotting them. There are ovals for your platoon. They're also over here. And you have an insignia for your particular platoon. Here, reminiscent of the cotton balers insignia. And by the way, you can customize that.
A whistle is blown. The exercise begins. Someday, I hope we shall be able to fight downhill for a change. A captain in the 16th Infantry wrote his family on July 30th. Cactus-blanketed slopes seamed with ravines and razorback ridges. Highland grass fires set with napalm flamethrowers to flush German infantry on at least one occasion tinted the sky red and perfumed the air with burning cork oaks. Atkinson, Day of Battle, page 149. So, mission, finish the exercise before turn 4, and the men suffer no more than light casualties. The exercise begins.
Mortars, forward.
All right, select the captain, hit the rally button, rally the adjacent unit. Unlike a regular leader, a captain can bolster, press, and rally squads of their company when they're merely adjacent instead of being stacked with them. That squad is getting their shit in gear, but we can press them to do more, Sergeant Bennett notes. Soldiering isn't about big deserts and beds of flowers. Or big desserts. Press the men into action. Together, you and Bennett get the men moving again. There is no time to rest, not yet. The press order will expend one leader's order, but then refresh a single order for a squad. This is most often used when the squad is in a bad position, but is also spent and can't act. A squad becomes tired and can't be pressed again until it is rested either via a rally or a rest command.
There's another reason we do lead arounds, to emphasize another coordination problem, namely coordinating your company of 4 distinct platoons, independently led. That's not easy, and so the rounds force you to choose what platoon is doing what. And there's a last reason. The military likes to say, the enemy gets a vote, meaning they're not going to sit quietly while you do all the wonderful things you'd like to do. They might want to do things that interrupt your plan, kind of like happens in chess. You get a move, they get a move.
The umpire writes something in a small box and then initials it. Nothing like a few sharp words from a sergeant to get a squad moving again, Sergeant Bennett remarks once the excitement ceases. Now we need them to lay down some fire to see whether the enemy is hiding over there. Send a messenger to Dearborn? Sergeant Bennett asks. It's his men, and you'll probably have other things to take care of shortly. No comment, the field umpire notes, except to say that a captain's time is valuable, which is why you have subordinates that you can act in tandem with. So he's right, Dearborn can handle this. Have Dearborn order a recon fire without having to pass the round. A captain can act in tandem with his subordinates. Have Dearborn order a recon by fire without having to pass the round. Or if only Stern were in a better position, have Dearborn order recon by fire without having to pass the turn. Yeah, so. This is why a captain has subordinates. They can order their squads while their captain handles the bigger picture at the same time. All right, select the squad, click Recon by Fire, fire on the hex. Recon by Fire is exactly like ordinary fire, except that if the enemy is hidden in the hex, there is a chance that they will fire back and be revealed. As usual, shooting with a rifle squad will consume up to 2 orders. There they are, Sergeant Bennett calls out, and they're dug in like a dog on Monday. Time for mortars? Nearby, the field umpire makes a note on his clipboard. Time for some mortars. A quick wave of flags gets Stern's attention. It is now a question of targets. The refs want 2 objectives taken, and they want casualties to be light. The 2 objectives are marked on your map. Certainly the refs will tell you when you have officially seized them, and if the enemy has taken them back. They will also tell you if you have inflicted the necessary casualties on the enemy or captured/destroyed key battle units. Those clipboards are good for something after all. If no one is in possession, things get a little tricky, at least until someone puts up the proper flag. Casualties are inevitable, at least that's what everybody says, and you know that at least one seemingly healthy recruit has dropped dead from an undiagnosed heart condition. But regardless of why it happens, the more casualties a unit suffers, the worse it will be as a fighting unit. Right now, the men are fresh and the objectives have not yet been taken. Time to command. Okay, so, seems to me like the captain needs to do the... I'm curious which of these it wants me to do. Finally, barrage with mortars. Let's do the off-map mortars. Flags go up. The enemy over there registers the hits. You have unleashed the 105s instead of the mortars, the umpire indicates. I recommend remedial artillery identification for you. Now then, you still have the mortars available to you. Proceed to the overlook position and act as a spotter for those lighter rounds. Time to move to higher ground. The exercise continues as you hurry up the hill. The captain can see all this, which means he can call in artillery on all this.
Command and control and practice. we've got an assault situation. We're hoping to take out these Germans here. To make it a little clearer, let's turn on bases. And why don't I bring down one of my squads? Notice up here it's indicating it's going to be my round because I'm doing something. So it's committed to moving my platoon. Now I could move everybody now, but I want to emphasize you don't have to do everything at once. Let's just say I want to pass to see what the enemy does. So I do. Luckily they're pretty passive. I'm going to creep these guys up. I'm going to use hotkeys to make this faster. Now I feel in pretty good position for an assault, but unfortunately it's my round, so I can't really start firing astern. Let's pass. Remember, leadership rounds, command and control.
You can see a lot from up here, enough to sketch out a rough battle plan. The field umpire taps his pencil against his clipboard as you get into position. Here we go, Sergeant Bennett says. Concealed view of the battlefield. Not perfect, but take a look at that house down there. The enemy is almost certainly inside. We could ring their bell with some artillery. Let's bring the thunder. The U.S. Army is going to use a lot of artillery. And here comes some of it. Okay, so I'm thinking let's focus on these guys first, just because we're going to clear out this group. And so I imagine... Also, we're just going to be able to fire on this squad with stern in a bit, so... Flags go up, the exercise is paused as the refs check your numbers, then verify things with their rangefinder. Eventually, they agree that the mortars were effective. That's the math then, Sergeant Bennett says as you survey the hammered target. They look suppressed, but let's follow up on those buildings before they recover. Discerning enemy capabilities is a key point of the exercise, the field umpire remarks and idly taps his clipboard. However, there is another small matter. Wait for it. The umpire points down the hill where a team of Stern's machine gunners have positioned the big wooden log that represents their Browning 30 cal. Trouble is, the weapon has a blind side in regards to the southern objective. Send a runner, order them to change facing. You summon a runner to give the order for him to relate. Nearby, an umpire gives a little nod of approval. All right, select the units, use the take command button. Nope. Stern's gunners swiftly reposition their wooden log to cover more of the battlefield. That will have to do, the field umpire remarks. Lieutenant, Captain, you may, as they say, fire when ready.
Captain Lamb here can do a couple of things. First, he's going to take this squad. You notice it's spent, and he's going to revive it. He's going to press it, give it an order. Notice he can do this even though it's your round, because he's the captain. He's going to bolster. I bet you can see where I'm headed now. And let's do the assault. Notice I get to do my assault during my round. Hoping for the best. Ha! I use the captain to glue my company together, to coordinate my weapons platoon with my infantry platoon. So, use your orders carefully. Place your leadership appropriately. Manage command and control. Command and control on the battlefield is hard. That's why you've got the burden of command.
The exercise will commence in earnest. 2 houses, 2 objectives. Okay. So it says Dearborn's leading right now. Okay. So I think what I'm going to do here, I'm going to fire on these guys with this unit. And my reasoning here is that I'm curious. Oh yeah, so What I was going to say was like, okay, well, maybe with, actually, do we have, yeah, we don't have the mortar. So I was going to say, all right, so if we bolster.
Cotton balers, with me.
Actually, yeah, so it's risky. Yeah, actually, yeah, it's a 50-50 on this one. But it's 50-50 there as well. Let's go for it. So the logic here is that because these guys have already been beaten up and because they don't have a leader, we can mop them up sort of on our own time. Only a squad can secure an objective. A leader moving alone cannot. So we'll pass over. Stern will be able to beat the hell out of these guys. Or will when we move him.
Ross, aim high.
All right, now that kind of sucks because what I wanted to do was have the machine gun do this. However, I do have Captain Lamb to do the move that I wanted. Again, it feels kind of crappy that happened, but I've played such games in the past. All right, so we'll pass the turn.
Hello, LT. I want to talk to you about one last nice aspect of your ace, your captain. He can influence troops adjacent. Doesn't sound that powerful, but it turns out to be quite efficient. So I'm going to have him bolster, I'll use hotkeys here, this adjacent member of your platoon. You didn't have to pay. Let's bolster these guys. Still didn't have to pay. Notice the enhanced movement. And if you want to be sneaky, you can even take command of one of my, or I'd say one of your platoon squads, and pay their initial activation for their move. That leaves you free to do whatever you might need to do. Assault, lead firefights, etc. You can also rally. Powerful.
Flags up, flags down. No one is quite sure what is going on. There is some yelling between the umpires about the bombardment, but little of it makes sense. Finally, the umpires break out their field radio. At least you think it is a radio. Look at that, Sergeant Bennett says. Hope they can pare that rig down a mite before we deploy. Stern leads the weapons platoon. Dearborn has the 3rd platoon. But for this field problem, you are their captain. Your strategy is theirs. The other objective needs to be taken. Got a glance at the umpire's clipboard, Sergeant Bennett remarks quietly as the two of you watch the radio operators work. He's going to rank your personal performance. That means leading an assault, bolstering squads, rallying squads, pressing the men, and shooting at the enemy. The whole smash. The British were inclined to consider battle as something of a game and to adopt a sporting attitude towards the German enemy, even if in defeat. American soldiers had none of this attitude. Americans play games to win. They fight battles in the same spirit. Lucian Truscott, Command Missions, A Personal Story, page 574. Okay, what's next, Captain? Sergeant Bennett asks as the two of you return your attention to the field. Green donut shows approximately 70% chance to... Yeah, so I think I got lucky there given the 50%, but initiate, not win. Winning depends on other factors. So we need to take the objective. Now, it seems to me like Dearborn's probably my best bet here. But what I'm going to do, we're going to take Captain Lamb. All right. So I think in this case here, we're going to settle on... Actually, you know what? I'm going to take command with the captain. So the hope here is that we'll have Dearborn free. And sorry, it says shooting an already suppressed enemy. Okay, now that slightly annoys me because the whole point of using Lamb in this case was to keep Stern from leading. So I guess I should have done something differently. I'm just not quite sure what, but we will persevere.
Gentlemen, ready yourselves.
Failure! We just crapped out, Sergeant Bennett says as the refs roll their dice to decide the assault wouldn't work, but maybe we can shift the odds back into our favor. To assault, use a high morale unit and preferably bolster that squad prior to making the assault. If possible, flank.
No can do.
Yeah, so we don't have that bolster. Also don't have the range for him, so we're gonna settle for...
Come on!
That's an even chance. Let's see. Nope. Flag goes up. Referee's whistle tweets. Casualty LT, Sergeant Bennett tells you. At least that's how the umpires just called it. But between you and me, they're just making stuff up. We should move on the objectives.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
There's not much for me to do here. I mean, I can keep pounding on him, but I don't really think that'll count for much, so...
Stop whining and follow me!
Nearby radio crackles. One of the refs cups a hand to his headphones and then blows a shrill whistle. The exercise pauses. The field umpire steps towards you with his clipboard at his side. He points towards the south edge of the field where 10 soldiers emerge from the brush wearing blue armbands. Who are they? No idea, sir. Or, no, let's do all my men are accounted for. Are they? The field umpire asks and glances around. His dissatisfaction is quickly suppressed. Apparently so, but it is now your responsibility to get those men out of the exercise area. Guess they'll be Nickel Company men for a while, Sergeant Bennett remarks. Sacre bleu. All right, so let's see if Dearborn can deliver the the wind
Gentlemen,
now.
to
Not
me.
quite how I planned it going. Oh,
Follow my lead.
we got caught. Okay, so as a alternative,
Put him in the ground.
oh, and we can't hit that machine gun squad either. Okay, no spotter line of sight. Not so good. Oh, and we don't see the... All right, well, that was a real mess there. The field umpire checks his watch and taps a pencil against the clipboard absently. They want to cut things short, LT, Sergeant Bennett says, wiping the sweat from his brow. I just know it. Major mission victory is no longer possible. Set the rules, we must abide. Yeah, but we don't have to like it, Sergeant Bennett says. Orders? All right. So let's see if we can recover this. So one of the challenges here is this machine gun, but we can't actually see the machine gun. So
Faster, gentlemen.
okay, that gives me something to work with. Fascinating. So I'm wondering if we can just straight
With
up
me,
get rid of the...
gentlemen.
Yeah. Which means we should be able... to bolster these guys. And deliver a coup de grace. So, sloppy, but did the trick. Flags go up, whistles blow. What the hell, Bennett asks. Sigh and wait. Enemy bombardment, the field umpire indicates, and writes something on the portion of his clipboard. Late as usual, it will be heavy enough to mark the end of this exercise and the beginning of the review. So major victory for the men, minor victory for the mission, exercise completed on time. Nothing to be sad about, but obviously we could have handled that a little bit better. Continue with the story.
I think a good leader is a man who knows what has to be done and sets about to do it. But he also has to know about the people that he's got to do it with.
If you're not liking a guy and you know he's got the ability to lead you, you don't care whether you like him or dislike him. First of all, guts.
Guts.
Second of all, brains.
Guts, a lot of guts.
If you ain't got the brains, you don't belong there.
A lot of guts.
Because you're going to take men with you when he gets killed.
You don't want them to, you want to take no men, no matter if they hate you or not. You want to get them in alive and get them out alive.
You got to look up to the guy and like him. If you don't look up to him and like him, you're not going to go with him. And then everybody tells you any different, they're talking through their hat.
The field problem is over. The refugees confer, clipboards are exchanged, a dialogue concerning your performance begins and ends. Minor victories secured both objectives on turn 4. A major victory for men, referees determined that casualties were minimal, below 10%. You're able to send the wandering squad out of danger, but that wasn't part of our criteria. Firstly, you failed to personally lead an assault. The field umpire indicates and idly taps the top of his clipboard with his pencil, and if the men don't see you with them from time to time, they won't be half so eager to go in, Sergeant Bennett adds quietly. Temporary morale bolstering efforts were acceptable, the field umpire says. The men know your voice, Captain, Sergeant Bennett says to you, and they'll respond. Rallying technique minimal, the field umpire remarks, casting a sideways glance at Bennett. He means you left things to your lieutenants, Sergeant Bennett says, which isn't terrible, but you have to be able to motivate them if someone takes it in the neck. Lastly, fire direction, unproven, the field umpire says as he taps his pencil on top of the clipboard. When a captain directs fire, Sergeant Bennett says, things get done. Frankly, you need a refresher course, the field umpire notes, then signs the bottom of the clipboard, which we'll arrange to polish the rust off. No sense polishing a turd, Sergeant Bennett remarks. Eventually gain 4 XP. Where to come up short, you did not participate in an assault, you only bolstered the men once, you did not rally the men, you did not fire alongside the men, they really need more direction after they bolster. Captain leads his men, he doesn't just command them. Next exercise. Tomorrow's another day, Sergeant Bennett agrees as the platoon sergeants organize the men into columns for the march back to the barracks. Hopefully Sergeant Layton has a hot dinner ready for them. They've certainly earned it. Bolster command only affects... So we did see this one. Post-trample, Camp Pickett, Virginia. Yep. Landing in detail. Again, I was under the impression that when it says scrollable, zoomable, click to dismiss, I did think that you could zoom in a little bit more and read more about this, but I'm also sort of fighting for time here. So we will enjoy the images. United, we are strong. Plan of attack. In the brief time available for planning his attack, the platoon leader must consider the following items. A, the terrain as it affords the enemy observation and fields of fire against his own and nearby friendly troops, and concealment from which to launch surprise counterattacks. Since his knowledge of the enemy's strength and exact dispositions usually will be incomplete or even non-existent, he must determine not only where enemy guns and men are located, but also where others might reasonably be located. The terrain as it affords opportunity for the movement of his squads. He endeavors to locate favorable approach, ditch, wooded draw, bush, leading toward or past his objective. The situation on his flanks. He must determine whether his flanks will be exposed or protected by the location or action of friendly troops. The localities where smoke or supporting fires to be provided by higher units are to be placed. The localities where he must be prepared to place the fire of his rifles and automatic rifles and any of the attached mortars or light machine guns in order to coordinate their fires with the fire provided by a higher unit, and in order to support the advance of any part of the platoon. The terrain as it affords firing positions from which these fires can be delivered and covered routes to these positions. Aid your men. I think we're going to do the usual. So there is an argument to actually put all the experience in the leadership. And the reason for this is that having people with, like, having leaders with more experience will actually allow you to get more out of the troops. But yeah, I'm gonna run with what I got here. Burden of command would have been impossible without our dedicated volunteers and playtesters. September 1942, Virginia, United States. This will probably... So I would have liked to have...
That's where we left from. We left from Newport News when we went overseas to Africa then.
Now, when you were there, did you know where you were headed at that point in time?
Nope. Nobody knew where we were going or anything. I mean, until after we were out to sea for, quite some time, and then somebody said we were going to Africa.
25th September 1942, Camp Pickett, Virginia. I was kind of hoping that we could get out of training, but I also play very slowly. But this, I think, is actually not a bad one to wrap up on, unless we get through it really, really quickly. But the barracks at the other end of the courtyard are quiet and still as you approach. A starlight glance at your watch finds that it's almost time to resume training. You could use a full night's sleep, Lieutenant, Bennett says as he falls in beside you. It's been a rough couple of days. So wake them now, no slack here. Wake them at dawn at usual. Or they've earned an extra hour of sleep. This time we'll say they've earned an extra hour of sleep. Eventually the lights come on and the men wake. With only a little coaxing, they commence their usual shift, shower, and shave, followed by a hot breakfast. But, the usual shit, not shift. But there's no time for idle digestion. The order goes out, and they grab their gear before stumbling out into the light of the rising sun. On the morning of the march turn out promptly for the first call for reveille. Perform your toilet and make up your roll and pack, or pack your saddle. According to the instructions of your commanding officer, you will water and feed your animal. If mounted, eat breakfast and wash and pack your mess kit. After breakfast, you will be allowed 10 or 15 minutes to relieve yourself and complete your pack and roll. Field Manual 21-100, Soldier's Handbook, page 141. The brisk hike ensues. The map takes you right up a ravine, and the men march on despite their heavy packs. Halfway to the top, the field umpire steps out from behind a tree, the expected clipboard in his hand. The sole exercise of the day, he calls down to you. Company-level operation. You are to secure the road ahead, both the crossroads near the apple orchard and the hills overlooking it. A halt of 15 minutes is usually made at the end of the first 45 minutes of marching. After the first halt, columns, including foot or mounted troops, usually halt for 10 minutes each hour. These halts are for the purpose of permitting men and animals to relieve themselves, adjust equipment, and inspect animals, motors, vehicles, and loading. Field Manual 21-100, Soldier's Handbook, page 142. The field umpire turns and gestures towards the crest of the nearby hill. Your men groan as they realize just how much further they have to go today. Why are the peaks always on top? Private Morris asks. They've always been up there, Private Patterson replies. Tradition. Ah, hell, this'll be easy, Sergeant Bennett remarks as he hikes to the top of the ravine beside you. We know our stuff, Lieutenant. Fire and movement, bombardments and assaults, nothing to worry about. Just a bit of a walk getting there. Then the field umpire blows his whistle. Enemy machine gun, plunging fire. 2 casualties, choose one of these men. He points to Morris and Patterson. Patterson points at Morris. Morris points back to Patterson. Losses are assessed by the umpire with the company, not by umpires with opposing units. The umpire keeps a running record of losses and informs the company commander of them from time to time. Weigh the merits of Morris versus Patterson. For all their wisecracking, both men are competent soldiers. Patterson's definitely the cleverer of the two and has that easygoing southern charm, but Morris has an excellent bullhorn voice when he needs to be heard and hard-headed New York practicality to back it up. If... Field umpire blows the whistle again. Too long, Lieutenant. Your hesitation means both men are dead. Morris and Patterson both look at each other, shrug, and topple over melodramatically. The other casualty is your Sergeant Bennett, the field umpire indicates. However, he will be able to accompany you in spirit, as it were, but he may not pass along your commands. Sergeant Grant to the front. Grant will do fine, Sergeant Bennett says, as Sergeant Grant scrambles towards to assume the role of platoon sergeant. The platoon guide will be the replacement. Very well, the field umpire replies. We will now proceed with the exercise. The platoon guide moves in rear of the platoon and keeps in touch with the progress of adjacent units. He checks straggling and is responsible that the platoon leader's orders with reference to use of cover, maintenance of quiet and orderly advance, and other disciplinary measures prescribed for the approach are carried out. Manual 75, 1940, page 246, section 3. Grant comes forward. A swift explanation puts him in charge of the platoon. Both of your sergeants look your way as whistles blow once more. The rest of the men brace themselves for an uphill struggle. Let's get going. There's one thing, Sergeant Grant says, his sudden promotion to platoon leader clearly weighing heavily on him. It seems like every field problem included a part where, if we forget about cover, the refs would remind us. That's a good point. Thank you, Lieutenant, Sergeant Grant says. Why don't we creep around and take a quick look around? It'll slow us down, but we're waiting for Lieutenant Wilson anyway. Okay, let's creep forward. 2 orders, 1 hex of movement where the enemy can't op fire. Likely the unit will remain hidden too, but not always. This particular photograph shows members of the 442nd near St. Die. Use the creep button. A unit that creeps forward will expend 2 orders and move 1 hex. It will usually not be subject to opportunity fire and has a chance to remain, not become, hidden. So I guess the first question would be where I creep. In this case, it would have to be for me here. Silence means security. A propaganda poster entitled WAAC Silence Means Security from the Office for Emergency Management, Office of War Information, Domestic Operations Branch, Bureau of Special Services. Author unknown, but the image comes courtesy of the National Archives. There they are, a detachment of enemy soldiers waiting in the woods for you to come strolling towards the hill. Stealth remains our ally. We turn to Sergeant Grant and consider how to best both secure the crossroads and the elevated position. So finish the exercise before turn 8 and suffer no more than light casualties. So we are definitely limited in terms of things that we can do. We also don't have Stern with his machine gun. So my options here are pretty limited. But I'm thinking at this point, probably what we want to do is just move. I think I want to move people into cover, and then we can sort of beat the hell out of the enemy next turn if it comes down to it. So we're actually out of.
Pick it up.
Nope. Yikes. Okay. We can get Dearborn up front so that he can restore these guys. Oop. Why is this an invalid target? Oh, probably because they moved already. Crap.
Gentlemen, ready yourselves.
This is not going to end well for me, but I wanted to at least try and get something done. Yeah. That was unwise. Second platoon coming up. Sergeant Grant calls over to you. Lieutenant Wilson must have hustled them right over the ridge. If training were a game of chess, then this would be a strong move. He points towards a hillside where 30-odd men, along with their umpire, scramble along the wooded crest. Lieutenant Wilson leads from the front. The runners should make contact shortly, the field umpire says, and then checks his watch. Okay, so we got a couple things we want to do here. Let's rally.
We are not finished yet. Trust in me.
Okay. So the next question is, how do I... So if I creep the whole time, then I'm sort of wasting effort. I think in this case here, we'll try and get the surprise. Now the temptation here would be to try and take him out here, but as you can see, like the chance of this actually working is really, really slim. So I'm wondering, can I? Yeah, let's try this.
Hey, where are we going?
Okay, not great, but it's at least given me an idea of where the enemy is. Come
on!
It's about an even chance. Let's try.
Stay close! Frag out!
So obviously we pushed our guys pretty hard here, and we're going to need to spend some time recovering them. But we have Wilson available to sort of do some cleanup. These guys are completely...
Come on already!
I really thought that these guys would have been able to move further. Eee.
Quit your belly aching.
So yeah, we're basically recovering everybody next turn. The runner jogs over and halts before you. Lieutenant Stern says to tell you that he can have the mortars ready to pound the enemy to crap whenever the refs blow the whistle. That was quick. Sergeant Grant notes and glances towards the northeast where the runner came from. Usually the weapons platoon lags even further behind. We should send a runner to show him sight lines. So Stern knows his work. Stern knows where to put his guns for maximum effect. Consider the enemy's line of sight. The enemy has elevation, which makes their lines of sight superior, especially anything atop the hill where that machine gun is also set up. Stern's men continue their march with stovepipes and logs in hand. Okay. So, ideally, So the one challenge that I've got right now is that Stern doesn't really give me a whole lot right now, right? Like, this squad is not that big of a problem. The other dilemma is that I did want to try and recover some of my troops here. I'm going to risk a little bit at this point. All right. I am going to have to do something. So, first of all, rally. And we'll kind of roll the dice to see if we can get something on these guys. Okay, I mean, encouraging. I don't think we have what it takes to finish the job. Now, what's interesting here, because these guys are already in the red, I'm actually going to turn my attention to these guys because they're the fact that they're all grayed out means that they shouldn't be retaliating. Well, there goes that. So again, we're going to have to put some effort into recovering, but we will pass the turn. Okay, so the next challenge that I run into is I do need to kind of recover these units here. So we'll start with a rally for these guys.
Let's get back out there.
And then we're sort of out of actions to take at this point, but this is fine because we do need to actually make some forward progress. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a challenging one, but I'm going to... Okay, these guys don't need a rally. So I'm curious if I bolster them here. Yeah.
Gentlemen, to me.
I'm a little shocked that I can do this, but
We shall go forward.
Sacre bleu! Okay. So I definitely can't rally. Oh,
Rest assured the tide is turning.
yeah, I don't think that did what I wanted it to. So now this leaves me stern. Um, ouch. Now again, I can keep throwing the fire on these guys, but that's not really going to accomplish what I want. So what I think I am going to do, though, is I'm going to try moving... So I'm going to try moving this machine gun up like so. And Stern's going to move to these guys because they're going to need the rally. And hopefully maybe the site will... All right, not great. But we'll see if we can fix this next turn. We do have a couple of people who are sort of free. So, messenger from Company HQ hurries over. Lieutenant Captain Lamb wants you over at the command post now, and that's a direct order. An American infantryman from Fort Benning, Georgia, September 1940. Image courtesy of the new entry. Just follow the messenger. When Nickel Company's commander says to come over, Nickel's platoon leader comes over. You find Captain Lamb, map in hand, with 3 other messengers, one each for 2nd, 3rd, and the weapons platoon. After he glances your way, he dismisses them. Them fellas really want to put us in a pickle, don't they? He asks as you approach. Nod. Of course, they won't admit it, he says, and taps his map. The umpires say we need to take that hill without taking too many casualties. What do I need to know? Trying to move forward. They don't make it easy, Captain Lamb notes. Okay, we'll develop your plan. What are the sight lines? Indicate the hill's sight lines. The hill does dominate, Captain Lamb remarks. Note that they've got a machine gun. So they've got an MG, and probably more. Indicate the extent of cover. Note the likely ambush places. Cover's good for us, but also good for them. Anything else? Let's get to it, Captain Lamb says, and let's sleep an eager smile that stirs your nearby men to action. Yes, sir. Move out, Captain Lamb says, and with that you return to your platoon. For the first time in a long while, the entire company is training together. Okay. So, I think probably Captain Lamb would be well positioned to sort of be the rally ferry. Although I do need to be careful in terms of the potential risks that they're taking. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe we do something like this. Now the catch here is if I move Captain Lamb up like so, I can rally these guys, but I don't get... They don't get any other support. So what I think I'm going to do, this will be risky for my blue stripes. But he'll bolster these guys.
Get the lead out of your butt.
And we'll see if we can take these folks. Okay, so that's a good start for us. All right, so now we kind of need to recover. I think before I go any further, let's just get these guys up. This is going to set me up for restoring the... Oh! No good. All right. Wilson's going to need to help us out. Unless we can somehow get Stern to deliver pain on the enemy. Not really. I am going to move these guys up, though. Okay, so... I don't have a lot of great options with these guys, but what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to move these guys up just so we can hopefully clear out this squad here. Shit, Sergeant Grant says as the refs decide that the assault didn't work. We need to get the men fired up before we try that again. Make sure that you're using a high morale unit to attempt the assault, and whenever possible, bolster them. So these guys are actually left in a tough spot. They definitely need the rally. And I think our best option at this point is to move up. Yeah, honestly, I think probably what I need to do is just get Dearborn to move move at the start of the next turn. So Wilson kind of needs to save the day. Okay, these guys are going to be in a tough spot. Ouch. Oh dear. All right.
Give it to him.
Yeah, so our initiative chances aren't great. The assault almost certainly will fail. Yeah, overall, not a good turn for us again. I'm not making very good decisions. Wonder what tricks they've got planned for us up ahead, Sergeant Grant says, as the two of you consider the terrain and the map. The way Bennett tells it, the fellas who write these exercises always like trying to be clever. Hi, Quint. The enemy is prepared and has chosen this ground for a specific reason. The crossroads and machine gun position remain in the red team's hands. The runner races over and motions hurriedly for the umpire's attention. Naturally, he gives it. Naturally, Sergeant Bennett slips over to you. He certainly doesn't look dead. How are you holding up, LT? Sergeant Bennett asks. We haven't taken the crossroads yet. Notice, the umpires have too, and I've overheard a few things, Sergeant Bennett says and leans in. We can talk about how they work, and especially this field problem as well as solutions. I'm just going to move on. Good talk, LT, Bennett says softly as the umpire slowly turns back your way. See you on the other side of all this. Okay. So, we need to try and recover the situation. So we've got an even chance of making this work. Alternatively, I only have one action to take for this lieutenant. So I think I did say I was going to let Dearborn go first.
We are needed again.
So this is a little bit of a Hail Mary. All of a sudden, Lieutenant Dearborn stands up, signaling the referees for a timeout, and as he strides towards you. With respect to our judges, we must protest the parameters of this exercise, Lieutenant Dearborn declares as he pulls out a pack of smokes. The enemy's fire has proven to be so accurate as to approach the supernatural. Remain silent. He frowns and continues. The machine gun on top of the hill is so well sighted that a prudent commander would surely bypass this approach rather than beating their head against it like Burnside at Fredericksburg. We have no smoke, we have no planes or sustained artillery. There are tools warranted for the resolution of a problem such as this one, and we have been allowed none of them. Your choice may change Dearborn or the battlefield. Maybe that's the point, a trial of character. An evaluation of coolness under adversity, perhaps, Dearborn considers. I had not considered that the Army would understand these things, but clearly we could. Indeed, now that the idea lies in the open, we can see why this exercise would be so arranged. Let us proceed. At your dismissal, Dearborn heads off. When he reaches his men, he signals again to the umpires that they continue the exercise. Hate to say it, but he does have a point, Sergeant Grant says to you. The enemy picks the ground when they're playing defense. Bennett would always say that that's their battlefield. We're just fighting on it. Maybe it won't always be that way, but we've got to expect it will be. Return to the exercise. Dearborn sure is undaunted at our prospects, Lieutenant, Sergeant Grant remarks lightly beside you. He's not wrong, and while soldiers are trained to take cover at the first crack of a rifle round, sometimes it is better to keep moving, to reach good cover, or even close with the enemy and assault despite incoming fire. However, that gusto doesn't stop casualties. The umpires are fond of saying that bullets don't consider bravery in the equation before they hit. Training is important, experience more so. Green troops are vulnerable and will remain so until they become veterans. A shrill whistle blows. The exercise resumes. The British were inclined to consider battle as something of a game and to adopt a sporting attitude towards the German enemy, even in defeat. American soldiers had none of this attitude. Americans play games to win. They fight battles in the same spirit. Lucian Truscott, Command Missions, A Personal Story. Burden of Commandpedia. So I remember in the beta, I did better on this scenario than I'm doing right now. But
follow my orders and we shall prevail.
Let's see if we can try and clean up.
With me, gentlemen.
Okay. Let's think about the next few moves. So, Lamb would be good to improve some morale, I think. Looks like Stern can also put down some misery.
I know you can do this.
That was probably foolish, but... And these guys, unfortunately, are still pretty useless where they're standing. So we will wait on this.
Wir gehen nach Hause.
Okay, so let's see how many people we can rally with Lamb.
Rally on me. They can't keep us down. Let's get back out there.
Again, I need to recover my people.
Nicht verteilen. Auf geht's, Frontsoldaten. Hey, Kaugummisoldaten.
So, yeah, the real problem here is we can't actually deliver deliver the real crusher on these guys.
We ain't out of fight yet.
But I think this would be the time that we... no, I think it's actually better to keep this in reserve. I was going to maybe try and... I was going to try and do the press on these... Well...
Nothing fancy this time.
So yeah, this is almost certainly not going to work, but we do have a good chance at making him sad here. So next turn we should be able to take the acting lieutenant out. And then as a final step, we can move the machine gun up. Artillery is now available to your company, the field umpire indicates, and then gestures to your radioman nearby. Your Captain Lamb will call the coordinates as he would in the field. We will rule for the delays and accuracy of fire as needed. This includes possible issues with communication. Big guns, Sergeant Grant remarks. It's about time. All right. There's a couple things we want to do here. First of all, I want Wilson to try and...
Get your ass in gear.
Take this.
Come on.
Okay, good. So that's the rest of this squad now free to do...
Rosenfeld, kaputt.
All right. Now, I don't quite know why we didn't travel with Wilson. That is a little bit of a problem, but... Ouch. All right, well, he's going to have... Actually, this would be a good time for Lamb to do his thing. Oh, no, he can't because we exhausted. That's right. So let's turn over. All right, so now seems like a good time to see what this machine gun can do, and apparently absolutely nothing here. But we definitely want this gun to deliver some pain.
Bell, I'm counting on you.
Okay, so this is about as good as we're going to get with these two. Unfortunately, this one is going to be more of a problem. My only real option here is a mortar on these guys. But I'm not completely without options here. Again, I still need to get used to this return fire idea, because I always thought if they were out of orders, then they couldn't fire back. Hello, Ionics. It's probably more like a traditional war game than Into the Breach. Okay. So, first question, off map. All right, so I don't really have good line of sight here. So one thing I can do
Come on, cotton balers.
now, can I? Jesus. I was hoping to use the mortar to cause some trouble.
We gotta get him!
So obviously our worry is about these guys, right? But
Gentlemen, prepare for battle.
okay, and we failed at that. I'm going to move a unit up to take the objective. And we really don't have anything else to do here. I mean, we can fire on these guys, but that doesn't really accomplish anything, so... We'll try a heroic dash across the field, I suppose.
You got gum on your boots? Get going! Fire!
Yeah, not great for us. I can try this one more time, or I can try to move my blue people up. Even if I succeed, I'm not in a great position after this, so I think I am going to move, even though it does leave me a little exposed.
Find a target.
So the last thing is that this machine gun is actually in a position to cause a lot of trouble. Right now I just need to get a lot of these guys onto... I did not try Flashpoint campaigns. What I'm trying to do right now is just get to a point where their morale is low enough that I can get a little more breathing room. All right, it was worth a shot. I could have also tried moving these guys up, but... Jeep motors around the bend and zooms close. What the hell's their rush? Sergeant Gratz asks. Everything here is timed. Everything here is scheduled, the field umpire corrects as the Jeep and driver zips past. Yeah, but that's dangerous, Sergeant Gratz says. If he doesn't... The Jeep zooms over the nearby hill towards Captain Lamb's command post. The horn blares. A muffled thump, tires squeal, metal rends. Smoke rises out of the and a forlorn voice calls out, "Captain's down!" Rush over right now. High chance Captain Lair. Can't leave my men. Near certain chance. Nope. Can't leave them. Duty is always a heavy one. Your men need their lieutenant. Captain Land has his staff. Behind you, the field umpire notes something on his clipboard. And war leaders must lead even though they know that men will perish because of their orders. That is the burden of command. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so when I did this before, we took this position. I don't think I've ever seen Lamb get clobbered by the Jeep.
"7 decades ago, we were all so young, full of piss and vinegar, as they say, ready for the great crusade which lay ahead of us. We were out for payback because of the Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, some far-off place many of us had never even heard of prior to December 7th, 1941.
And I finished out that school year and enlisted in the Army in 1942.
We beat him before, we'll beat him again. The exercise ends. Currently draw, 1 objective secured. Currently a major victory, casualties less than 10%. Thank you for playing our demo. The full game is even better. Additionally, 2 scenarios have now been unlocked, Badenburg and Sacred Ground. Badenburg finds the Americans locked in a brutal winter battle following a failed tank attack. Sacred Ground commences when the Germans utilize a graveyard to slow the American advance through France. Both scenarios are short and sweet, excellent for streamers. So normally I would love to do something like one of these scenarios, but I am already half an hour past where I wanted to be, and I do have an early morning, so I think I'm going to have to wrap it up here. We will, however, see the remaining events. Jeep in action, Camp Pickett, Virginia. Why are we in this? Between the Atlantic Charter and the Declaration of Tehran, there were some 2 years and 4 months, and in that time the fortunes of the Allies turned from possible defeat to certain victory. President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill met at sea early in August of 1941, 4 months before Pearl Harbor. So the Atlantic Charter, which came out of their conferences, was not a plan of war for the United States. It was a declaration of principles, an international Bill of Rights. Since then, the Allied nations at Moscow, Cairo, and Tehran have agreed to make those principles work. They have agreed to crush and disarm their enemies, but more than that, they have agreed to work towards keeping the peace. Contact. When a platoon follows another unit at night, contact is maintained by connecting files unless the tail of the preceding unit is clearly visible. In daylight, contact is similarly maintained whenever the intervening terrain makes visual contact difficult. The use of double connecting files increases the certainty of maintaining unbroken contact. Movement to successive objectives. In the daylight approach, the platoon is assigned an initial march objective by the company commander. When this objective cannot be pointed out to the base squad, movement to it must be made in a series of bounds to indeterminate platoon march objectives. The platoon leader indicates each march objective to the leader of the base squad in time to prevent any unavoidable halt. The platoon leader precedes the platoon at a sufficient distance to reconnoiter the zone of advance. He detours the platoon around a heavily shelled area or takes advantage of lulls in the hostile fire to cross the area by rushes. Squads perform in a designated area as prescribed by the platoon leader. Gassed areas are avoided. Areas exposed to hostile observation are crossed rapidly, often in a single rush. So, Aid the men. Now, normally you would have to, if this was a real battle, one of the things that I would actually need to do is spend to replenish the troops. But in this case, we're not actually losing anybody. So we'll do our usual experience move. And we are out of prestige or loyalty. So I will accept that. Presumably it'll send me back to the main menu. Yeah. So the only thing that I will say, I probably it would be good to look at the scenarios that it's offered here. But the one thing that I will say that the demo hasn't really captured is, of course, the thing that's highlighted in the title, and it spends some time talking about the burden of command, right? So you sort of see the tension between the men and the mission in terms of an overall objective. But one of the things that I think some of the scenarios are quite effective at is sort of creating these shifting circumstances. And one of the things that I do quite like about this game, I do sometimes find that it can be a little bit difficult to get a bit of a read in terms of what your overall position is going to be. And in some cases, you'll be surprised by, units placed in certain areas. And I feel like that's kind of fair game. But in other situations, you're sort of like, I kind of thought that this would be the outcome rather than the other one. I do have the opinion that I think an undo button for certain actions would be welcome. And it's basically the actions that don't have like permanent consequences. So what I mean by that is like if you move forward and see a new unit, you shouldn't be able to undo that turn. But if on the other hand, you wind up hitting a button, like maybe you get mistaken between like bolster or rally, you can do the undo. My feeling on this has always been that like Old World does this, and Old World fought the undo button for a really long time, and yet it was able to incorporate the undo button in a way that people still felt like their choices sort of had content and meaning, but the it wasn't something that wound up sort of spoiling the fun. And I know it's a hard one to convince people that undo buttons are actually a good thing, but it's the one that I think, just because of some of the stumbles I have over the UI, is the one thing that I probably would benefit from, just because it's a little too easy sometimes to get tripped up in terms of what the intent is. But again, that's a fairly minor point. The thing that I was hoping to kind of show off, because it's a little less present inside of the training exercise, though, is, like I said, they do a really interesting job in terms of giving you a fixed set of mechanics in the game, right? So there is that whole idea of sort of pinning down the enemy and trying to flush them out with an assault. But the idea of trying to keep a handle on your men, but also to put yourself in a very fluid scenario, and to really have to make some hard choices, sort of knowing that there is a threat present. And if you don't deal with that threat, you'll lose the mission. But dealing with that threat may involve sacrificing men. That's really one thing where this game winds up shining. So again, I have a feeling, probably in terms of my own read on this game, I have a feeling that I'm just one step further away in terms of the type of wargamer that this is appealing to. So, for instance, I respect and I wish I spent more time playing the tabletop war games, like the old school kind, which have some fairly complicated rules. I think probably if I had been gaming a bit earlier, this would have been the old SPI games that probably, there's SPI is the board game one. I'm thinking SSI. Those are probably something that I would get. And like, just to give you an example, this is something that's kind of aspirational for me. So I'd like to play some games like Shadow Empires, like the stuff that comes with like 200 or 300 page manuals. But again, I don't want to highlight this as like a major breaking point, but I actually have a feeling in terms of my own interaction with the game, I think I'm just one step slightly below the target audience in terms of wargamer for this. And that hasn't been a major impediment for me to enjoy it. But again, the absence of a couple of things that are a little bit. So they reference XCOM quite a bit in terms of the tactics and that. And I think one of the things that those games do well, in addition to the simplifications, is I do think that they have interfaces that are quite clear to the player in terms of what's going on. And so I think in that halfway point, if there was just that little bit extra for people who this might be their first more serious tactical game, that would be sort of the sweet spot. But one thing that they have added since the game, since I played the earlier beta of the game, is they did actually add the videos, and that's the project lead that's actually talking to you. So the one nice thing about this is that you do have videos giving you an idea in terms of how they think the game should be played. But the one thing that I do think can be a little more challenging in some cases is that you can also wind up in a situation where you understand those basics of sort of pinning people down and flushing them out. But sometimes the idea of implementing that in situations where the enemy's sort of playing to win, that can really take some effort. That can actually, like I said, there's a lot of variety in terms of the scenarios, and you can wind up in some situations where you need to kind of raise your head above the what the scenario is giving you. But that's some of the fun too, right? Like, it's definitely not an easy game, but it's one that's interesting. And like I said, the one thing that I'm hoping to show off, and we'll see maybe if the scenarios, if I can do something with the scenarios. I don't know when I'll be able to play this next, but it would be nice if I can sort of show off a little bit more of that men versus mission material. But that will be for another evening. So what I'm going to do here, I will leave you with the Burden of Command Steam page one more time. So for those of you who are interested in this game, like I said, it has RPG-ish elements. It is, I would still say at its heart, it is still a war game, right? So the big thing here is that if you like turn-based games and you like hexes, this is something that you should pay attention to. If you like Book of Hours, or if you like, RPGs which are a little bit more story-oriented, it's not going. I don't want to say that this is not worth your time. I think it's actually important to try and open your. I think it's important to sort of open the games that you consider to ones, but just keep in mind that it's going to be one that asks a bit more of you than what you would expect from a pure narrative game. I will definitely say that there is a long-term story. So if you do the campaign in the main game, my experience of that, at least, is to take you through the war, and to sort of be this. You kind of see this shaping of the American forces, right? You come out of training, you do that first encounter where you are going up against a progressively more experienced enemy. And the earlier scenarios are not necessarily more difficult, but you definitely kind of see your force gaining some experience. You start making some choices in terms of the direction where you want to take your troops, take your commanders, and you can potentially lose them. So if you have invested a lot into one of your lieutenants and you make a decision that costs you that lieutenant, you have to take it over. Like, you have to start over, and that applies to your character as well. Nobody is actually safe inside of this game. There are some real consequences in terms of some of the choices that you can make. But overall, I would definitely say it's an interesting take on it. It is one that definitely still wears its strategy origins. So again, like I said, the main things that you would want, or the main things that you will have in terms of like a main engine of gameplay, would definitely be the turn-based, hex-based strategy game. But what it's adding is definitely a pretty developed both story, but also that system in terms of the loyalty, the stresses, the basically the decision making, the narrative element to it. And it's not just there in the sense of being, you know, a series of dialogue options. They do have consequences both in terms of the overall mission, but also some of the directions where things wind up going. So it's a pretty unique game in that regard. And the only thing I'll say for the demo is that I'm not entirely sure it really showed you all of those differentiating features as strongly as it could have. But I will also comment that I have not yet done the scenarios, so that may still be in the future. In any case, I do hope you enjoyed this early look, and I do thank the Burden of Command team, Green Tree Games LLC, for letting me show this off. I am hopefully going to get back to the scenarios, but again, it is worth remembering that Book of Hours is getting its big expansion. So in this case, it's not a sort of drip of DLC. They're doing a big expansion on the 26th. The 26th, I will be streaming on their Steam page to show it off to the world. I am being paid to do that as well. So Wednesday, I feel like it would be good to do Book of Hours. And Friday, there's an open question in terms of whether or not I'm going to be able to stream, because I am actually going to need the day off. And then Monday, it is actually a day off of work. So I will not be streaming next week. I will be streaming on Wednesday, and I will do my best to stream on Friday, but we'll see where we are, just because I may have other obligations at that point. But this is a long goodbye. So let me just find see if there's anybody that I can host. And then we'll call it. I don't think there's anybody doing Burden of Command. I'll just take a look for the usual suspects. Okay, nobody doing Cultist Simulator. So I will raid Vesper Fortune, who's currently doing Blasphemous. Or actually, hang on. Vesper might be wrapping up, because I know he was streaming when I... Okay, sorry for this. What I will do is I will shout out Vesper Fortune. And I'm actually going to raid Lord Gloom, who I don't always get to host. And it actually looks like he is playing something that's a little bit more strategy-oriented. It's called Athena Crisis, which I haven't heard of before. But Lord Gloom is somebody who I actually think would also be a good fit for this one, because he plays a lot of card games. Magic, he plays Magic, he plays Cobalt Core. Definitely somebody I've enjoyed hanging out with, so I feel like he might be a slightly more appropriate streamer. And have a good night, Index Gnome. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Please treat Lord Gloom well, and I will see some of you at least on Wednesday. Take care.